The Tudor United SportsCar Championship began on the high banks of Daytona way back in January, and it ends today in the red clay hills of Georgia. After 8 long months of hard racing throughout North America, none of the sport's 4 classes has yet declared a champion. In prototype, teammates Michael Valiente and Richard Westbrook in their Corvette hold a mere 6-point lead over a pair of cars from Action Express, while Ford-powered Team Ganassi drivers Scott Pruitt and Joey Hand are coming off a huge win. In Grand Touring Le Mans, Porsche's Patrick Pilet leads 9 drivers from 5 teams with a shot at the crown. His nearest rivals, BMW teammates Bill Auberlen and Dirk Werner, are just 3 points back. Reigning Prototype Challenge champions John Bennett and Colin Brown are on the brink of defending their championship of a year ago, while Danish sensation Christina Nielsen has history in her grasp for Aston Martin if she can hold her 1-point margin over 10 challengers in GT Daytona. Those titles, plus the Tequila Patron North American Endurance Cup, will be decided over the next 10 hours as the contenders race from day into night at the 18th Petit Le Mans from Road Atlanta. Road racers take great pride in racing in the rain, but that commitment will be sorely tested today with championships on the line as we welcome you to the 18th running of the Petit Le Mans, powered by Mazda from Georgia's Road Atlanta. Hello, everybody. I'm Bob Varsha with Calvin Fish and Justin Bell. You'll meet the rest of our 9-strong team as we bring you all 10 hours of this great race. Now, you don't need to be told what the weather's doing here in the eastern United States. Just keeping race cars on track is going to be a challenge. But with all of the titles on the line, Calvin, the racers will not only be struggling with their cars, they'll be looking for their rivals and potential spoilers.
They really will, Bob. There's some intriguing championship scenarios in the prototype class. The leaders, Westbrook and Valiente, have had the lead since May. A podium finish here today seals the deal. The closest pursuers, the defending champs, the Action Express team. They've done it before. They've got 2 bullets in the gun this year with both the 5 and the 31. But don't discount Ganassi Racing. They've had a very quiet season by their standards, but of late, a lot of speed. They're coming off a big win at Coda. Do the same here today. They may just steal everything, JB.
Well, you know, for them to be the long shot winners, of course, it means it's at the cost of someone else. And I think that's going to be the theme and the story of today, guys, because this track is so demanding in the dry. In the wet here, we got dynamics at play that are really going to cause chaos. What's it going to do to the yellow flags? What's it going to do fuel consumption? The track is slippery. If you go off that Georgia red clay, well, that is pretty unforgiving. So stay tuned, because this is not only going to be great racing, it's going to be amazing entertainment.
Now, with more information, let's meet the first of our 4 pit reporters for this 10-hour event. Here's Jamie Howe.
Thank you, Bob. In GT Le Mans, the team and drivers championships are still wide open, but it's that manufacturer's title that everyone is chasing. And coming into the race today, Porsche does have a slight advantage over BMW and Corvette. Porsche also qualified 1-2, but that is not the way they're lining up today. The championship leading number 911 did not pass tech inspection with a ride height infraction. They will be starting last, and right in front of them will be the number 17 from Team Falcon Tire, as well as the number 912. Both of those cars suffered heavy damage during qualifying and had to be rebuilt overnight. So while Porsche has had the most success this season, they have the biggest challenge ahead of them today. For more on GT Daytona, here's Chris Neville.
Well, Jamie, many of those same manufacturers also competing in GT Daytona. Porsche, Ferrari, Viper, and BMW all collecting wins this season. And after 8 months of racing, well, we're down to the final 10 hours of competition. And 7 drivers are still in contention for this championship. Most notably, Christina Nielsen, the 23-year-old. She's got that championship lead. Now can she come away and be the first woman to win a major sports car championship? Bob?
Well, there you have it. Everything to play for on a very difficult day on a tricky racetrack, Road Atlanta. Stand by. Engines are fired. The field will be pulling away, and we will wave them green when we return.
Petit, awesome racetrack, 10 hours. It's a blast.
Traffic jam, old school, very challenging track.
Fast, sweeping corners.
Amazing American event.
The best track, in my opinion, my favorite. Welcome back to the 18th annual Petit Le Mans and the Tudor United Sports Car Championship. Brian Till along with Tommy Kendall with you now. And if you're a sports fan, you're going to want to stay tuned for this. It's going to be like the final moments of the NBA playoffs, maybe the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl. You don't have to have followed along all year long. It's going to be that good. And what I'm talking about, at least 24 drivers still have a mathematical shot at one of the 4 championships up for grabs in the Tudor United Sports Car Series. And with this racetrack and these weather conditions, Tommy, every turn, every lap is going to be intense.
Yeah, before we got here, I was really excited to watch the fireworks between Bill Oberlin and Nick Tandy, given their history, all at stake for Porsche and BMW. But once I got here with the condition, I realized the biggest rivalry is between every single car and the track. To use that Super Bowl analogy, imagine if there was a 100-foot drop-off 1 foot out of bounds, because your whole season can go up like that with just a tiny slip-up.
Well, I think Tommy and I are going to go find a couch in a hospitality suite somewhere, Bob, and we'll come back to join you in a couple hours.
All right, guys, stay dry. Opened in 1970, Road Atlanta is a legendary circuit. Here's our Ford track map and Justin Bell.
Well, at 2.54 miles, it's demanding in the dry. But in the wet, I tell you what, this is something else. Turn 1 is going to be extremely tricky. The uphill, there's a river running across that. Through the sweeping S's, that's the same thing. The story, this water will grab you and drag you into that Georgia red clay. If you go off, it's going to have consequences, guys.
There's a look at the field on track. You can see the puddles forming along the verge. Our Continental starting grid is across the top of your screen. There's a look at our onboard camera lineup, just a few of them. Great selection of prototype cars, including championship contenders from visitflorida.com, the 90. Got some of the GT LM machinery and some GTD cars. So many stories to tell. Time for our WeatherTech weather update. Well, the pictures tell the story. It's wet. Humidity at 90%. There is a breeze blowing. Hard to predict what the weather's going to do. More rain is in the forecast with those huge storm systems up and down the East Coast and out over the Atlantic. This is going to be, as Brian put it, a very entertaining race.
You can see the standing water there right through turn 10. That's going to be a problem. We saw the onboard cameras. Visibility will be a big problem for 3 of the 4 classes here today, JB.
Yeah, but those 2 guys at the front, let's see what they can make the most of their open road.
10 hours of racing to come and a great race in store. Richard Westbrook, our pole sitter, takes the honors down through turn 12, and we are green at Road Atlanta.
Well, I think Westy knew they wanted to throw the green. They didn't want to kind of stack everyone up there through turn 12, so a great move by our championship leader.
Yeah, I'd have done just the same. That was good, but look at this. A lot of action there going into turn 1. The first time you go through a corner like that in these conditions, no matter how good you are, no matter how many laps you've done around here, it's definitely going to be a challenge.
It's like Johnny Mullen may have got around our pole sitter in the PC class of Tom Kimber-Smith. Here comes the GT start.
Green flag, green flag.
And they come down the straightaway. Good move for the Corvette. Oliver Gavin leaping to the front. Lucas Luhr slots in second in a BMW.
Yeah,
Problems
you can see
early, JB.
Yeah, you know what? Having the spinners already, very easy to do. And the trouble is you can get unsighted. You don't know if someone's going to emerge out of the ball of spray in front of you the wrong way around. But these GTLM cars are so incredibly quick. Their tires are so good in the wet. We've seen their pace during practice and qualifying, Bob. They're pretty outstanding in these conditions.
And remember what Jamie pointed out, the fastest cars in the class all weekend are the Porsches, and they're starting at the back of the field for various reasons.
You just have to be careful. There you could see one of the Vipers really sideways there, coming down through the S's. We saw a lot of problems there yesterday. Both 2 of the Porsches had big shunts there in qualifying.
Yeah, sorry, Bob, it's the running water across the track that causes you the problem. Stable, consistent water is not a problem for a driver. You can adapt for that. But right now, as you can see the water on our camera lenses, that's how bad the visibility is for the guys in the cars. They're seeking out their own line through the track. Look at the Falcon car trying to make his way. He's got to get some ground up. Very, very tricky. Look at this now. This is the 16 car taking a little ride round.
Yeah, that's Johnny Molam. He started second, got around our pole sitter, and he gets lucky to get away with it. Tom Kimber-Smith takes avoiding action. I think as Chris Cumming may have gone to the front there in that bright orange machine.
It is an absolute skating rink out there. As Justin pointed out, right here is a river. High ground on the left, low on the right, so the water flows across the track on board the 90.
This is on board with Westy. He put the car on the pole in similar conditions here yesterday. He said the car felt great, but traffic is going to be the biggest concern. And these are the championship leaders. As we said early, a podium finisher seals the deal for them for the title tonight. But it's a long 10 hours to survive.
Westbrook was really impressive in the wet qualifying. He just kept getting faster and faster and faster with every lap.
And everyone has that exposure to risk. And I think when you're leading a championship, ideally you'd like a nice dry race, Justin. You'd like less variables. Just go out and run to your game plan. Here you're going to be on your toes literally all day long.
I reckon one of the hardest working people in the pit at Road Atlanta today is going to be their strategists, because it's going to be this continual ebb and flow of information. But look at that, there's a car, we can see the lights. I think that's the 11 car, and the Viper goes round. Don't hit the wall! Oh,
there goes the rear wing.
And don't visit Florida if you're in a Viper.
That's how easy it is. Oz Negri had a spin and a crash in this morning's warm-up session. He texted me, he said, at 140 mile an hour in the dry, it's no problem. At 63 miles an hour in the wet, he lost control. That's the difference in the grip level.
Yeah, look at that. That's just, you see, Calvin, you're a native to here. I guess it's, you live here now. The ground is saturated, right? Is that our problem? There's nowhere for that water to go.
It's been raining basically for a week, so there's no runoff with that water, and it's just puddling on the racetrack, unfortunately. The 33 car, Ben Keating behind the wheel right now. They'll try and get that car back. It was minor damage, but it's going to take them out of contention for a win here today.
I was just about to say, you do whatever you can. It's no different right now for him to you when you get stuck in a parking lot in your road car. In fact, as most of the fans here will be tonight when they try and leave. Whichever way you can get out, Bob, you're going to do it.
That's right. And we talk about these red clay hills. Very high clay content in this soil, so it doesn't soak up an awful lot of water. Another look. See the disabled car on the left. Here comes Keating, and around goes the Viper right at that river.
Yeah, it's where all of the water just gathers there, and you think, how can he lose control going at that speed? It's like getting out of the shower and slipping on a tile floor. It's literally that quick. You don't expect it, and suddenly it's taken out from underneath you.
Ben Keating and his co-driver, Jeroen Bleekemolen, just 11 points behind GTD points leader Christina Nielsen coming in. They have a much bigger task ahead of them now if they are to be champions. We'll be back.
We've certainly had a good season here at Corrado Sport in the PC Championship. Certainly been a front runner every week, been in contention to win races. You know, all in all, leading the championship. We just got to finish the season strong, do what we've been doing all year.
Good season so far, so we had a couple of podiums. The points are very close, so it's still everything possible. Still have the chance to go for it.
Consistency is the key to being on top of the points. We're just going to give it our all and, you know, continue what we've been doing so far.
We've been on the podium, we've won races, we finished second, we finished third. We've led this championship. And then going into Petit Le Mans, it's going to even open up to a four-way battle with the final race to go. It's the most competitive year I've ever been involved in ever.
We've had a really, really strong start to the year with a win at 24 Hours of Daytona and again at Sebring. We're not exactly where we want to be right now, but you know, anything can happen.
That start of the season with two problems in the long races in Daytona and Sebring, but we won 3 races in a row. For the moment, we just have the best position in the championship. It gives us more confidence in the future, for sure.
Big improvement for last year. Came back really strong, and we've been leading the championship for 4 or 5 races. It couldn't be any tighter. Going to go down to the last hour in Petit.
It's been an unbelievable season for us. We win at Detroit, and then we go on to win at Road America. With how strong we feel and how good we feel about it, I'd be looking for us to win this championship.
Success and potential championships always bring smiles, but once again, as we return to wet and rainy Road Atlanta, all of the championships are in play. And the scenarios under which one team or another might claim them, there's simply dozens of them. From our Mazda safety car, see the field on the backstretch, led by Richard Westbrook in the championship leading number 90 Visit Florida.com Corvette Daytona prototype. It looks like Ben Keating has made the pit lane, and the team has gotten some repairs done on that Viper as he comes back out. Let's go down to Jamie Howe.
Well, Bob, I mentioned the 912 needing to be rebuilt overnight. That actually needed a new tub. The team did have a spare on hand, so they got the new tub out of the truck, built a brand new race car around it. The team was here until about 2 o'clock this morning, went back to the hotel, got about 2 hours of sleep before they had to come back to the racetrack, get the car all set up for the race today. They went out for the morning warm-up, did not have a single issue. But as we know, the race can always be something different. And right now, Earl Bamber's out there in that number 912 Porsche without any telemetry. So the team is relying on him to relay information. Chris?
Well, Jamie, it's also been a busy week for the Mike Shank racing crew. On Thursday night, John Pugh was off the racetrack, did significant damage to the tub of that race car. They had to take it to Elan Technologies here in town and actually repair that tub. Got it back to the racetrack on Friday, got the car repaired, but then in practice this morning, warm-up practice this morning, Oswaldo Negri was off the racetrack. You can see a lot of damage there on the 60 car from Thursday night. And then fixing the car yesterday all day long, lots of damage to that car. But then in warm-up this morning, Oswaldo Negri back off the racetrack in this practice, just 63 miles an hour through the S's, and he was off the racetrack. And that was the build-up from yesterday. And then that car heading back out on the racetrack. And here's that off from Oswaldo Negri. So it was a very slow-speed accident, but right in the wall, and a lot of damage to the back end of that car. The rear suspension was the main point there. The team back, pulling that car apart, having to fix that rear suspension, the bodywork there, trying to support that. And the big thing with this team is they are out of bodywork, so they had to repair the bodywork from the accident this morning. When Oz took the car on the racetrack after that, he said, we've still got damage to that right rear corner, so the team replaced all the suspension components on that right rear. Oz just called into the team and said, hey guys, everything feels okay.
That's about the first time all weekend that the Mike Shank Racing crew has heard that. And kudos to that three-man crew from Elan Technologies who worked all night Friday to get that car on track. Welcome back to Road Atlanta and the final event of the Tudor United Sports Car Championship for 2015, the Petit Le Mans, powered by Mazda. So many stories this weekend, so many tributes to the commitment of racers to get into this race and to bid for a championship, and none greater than this one, the number 60 car from Michael Shank Racing, the Leger JSP2, Oswaldo Negri currently behind the wheel. We talked about the repair that had to be done overnight on Friday. If you take a close look at the fenders and that white bodywork on the car, you'll see a bunch of signatures. Fans were welcomed to the Michael Shank pits to sign and perhaps to make a donation to the fund for the children of Justin Wilson. Sorry, we can't give you a better look at it, but you know the story of Justin, who was killed in an IndyCar accident earlier this year. He raced with this team and won the 2012 Rolex 24 Hours at Daytona. The team is heartbroken at what happened to him, but they are out here this weekend to race. And when that car was fixed at Elan Technologies, Mike Bryant, Howie Udall, and Paul Matthews were the guys who did the work. There was a sizable fee involved, you can be sure, but the folks at Elan Technologies are donating half that fee to the Justin Wilson Fund. And that tells you something else about the racing fraternity.
Got Westy there, trying to get the power down here, a little wiggle. Fittipaldi's right on his tail here as we get the green.
Yeah, he's certainly trying to make the most, Fittipaldi, of the green flag being waved there, but streaming down Westy knows, you know, the rain hasn't certainly deteriorated, I don't believe, in the last 5 minutes during that yellow, so track is probably pretty familiar to him. Also, track position is very important in the wet, Calvin, isn't it? So restarts are your opportunity to try and snatch the one position at least from the guy in front.
Top three cars in the championship running nose to tail at the front of this field. Richard Westbrook in the 90, Christian Fittipaldi in the 5, Dane Cameron in the 31.
And then the guy right behind them is Ricky Taylor in the number 10 car, and the 10 car has a habit of winning the final championship race of each season. They did it in 2013 at Lime Rock, the final Grand Am race. They did it here at Petit Le Mans last year. They're the defending race winners. Haven't shown extreme pace here this weekend, but they're a solid unit. Max Angeli back on the driving squad for the Enduros. They're going to give everyone a hard time here today, I think.
Brothers Taylor, Ricky, and Jordan came in 16 points behind Valiente and Westbrook in the Drivers' Championship. It's a long shot, but they're still mathematically alive.
And of course, people want the race win as well, Bob. So the championship is important, but we saw it in the races this weekend, in other series. Everyone wants to try and get a race win at Petit Le Mans to go into the off-season carrying the #1 trophy with them.
To Chris Neville.
Well, Bob, we can see the Viper Exchange team trying to get this 33 car fixed. I think they're getting ready to go down either 2 or 3 laps right now. Bill Riley up on the wall telling his team what they need to do. And there was major damage to the rear bumper cover, the rear wing, and also the diffuser. The team has the rear bumper cover fixed, but they didn't get the diffuser on, so the team adding a little bit more wing on there. And you can see they're putting a lot of bare bond on this bodywork. But you got to think, is that bare bond going to stick in these wet conditions? Jamie?
Also on pit lane during the entire caution period has been this number 11 with Chris Cumming behind the wheel of the car. They did have to repair the wing, the back side of that car. They also took off the front end just to make sure the splitter was all right. Everything was fine there, but they did find broken suspension. So they're still going to be sitting on pit lane for a while, guys.
While the race goes on.
88 and the 01 cars are now serving drive-through penalties for having to start the race from pit lane. They didn't make the cutoff to make the pre-grid. The 01 car had some kind of electrical issue they were really worried about after the morning warm-up, so a bit of a panic there, but they're back out there. Joey Hand, who started the race, had made good hay in the early going here, but has to serve that drive-through penalty, and that's going to cost you about 30 seconds on the field. But it's all about just survival right now, JB. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, we're used to seeing a driver of Joey's caliber literally slaughtering their way through the slower cars to get to the front. He has to be a bit more circumspect in this. But you know, people know they're coming through the field. All the guys starting at the back, the spotters are telling them that, relying a lot on spotters. I'm sure we'll hear it on radios later. The fact that they need extra eyes and ears out there to help guide them through this. But after the off yesterday for Porsche and the other problems with that team they had coming into the race, they've had such a dominant run recently. It's really the only knock I can see, and in that team's momentum over the last few races. Oh,
they've been tremendous right from mid-season. From Watkins Glen when the Falcon Tire team won, they've gone on a tear, and the blip was the last race at Coda. They were running 1-2, just didn't quite have enough fuel. Had to pit with 5 minutes to go, and that knocked them back in the points that day, Bob, and that was huge in the championship for GTLM manufacturers, drivers, and teams.
Absolutely. Get a quick look at the battle for third in GTLM. Antonio Garcia, the number 3 Corvette, trying to hold off Earl Bamber and Nick Candy in the 2 factory Porsches. And here's Brian Sellers from the little team that could. Final appearance in the series in Falcon Tire colors. Brian Sellers and his teammate Wolf Hensler won this race each of the last 2 years. 33 back into trouble in the kitty litter.
Calvin, we were saying before the race started that,
Make sure you get all that gravel off if you can.
Yeah, good call there from Bill Riley, saying that to his driver. Obviously, Ben can't see what we can see. I wouldn't go back in there, mate. But he's trying to get his way to the track. But we were saying that, obviously, strategy-wise, often you would start in GTD.
Okay, but you're on the track. Let's go. You're clear behind right now.
And of course, that is a risk in this, because by all default, they're probably not as used to driving in the wet as the pro.
Well, a big fact. Everything looks good. Water pressure is good.
It's Bill Riley talking to Ben Keating.
Shake the car a little bit. Shake the car.
Everybody will thank you for it later. Depositing gravel on the racetrack.
Oh, look at this stack
Past
up
the
there.
pit in. Oh.
It's Garcia and 2 of the Porsches that are skiving their way through this field. They sandwich him here.
Oh, 4
wide. The meeting of Porsche sandwich as they head into turn 1.
Oh.
Well, guys, just listening to Ben Keating on the radio before he went back out on the racetrack, as the team was telling him, hey, get ready to go back out there. He said, guys, I can't see anything. The windshield has fogged up as we were sitting in pit lane here. So the team tried to wipe that windshield down, but he's still having visibility issues in the car. And Calvin, as we know, it's so tough to keep these windscreens clean, and especially when you've been sitting in pit lane that long. It just heats up and steams up.
Yeah, particularly with the front engine cars, you've got all that heat and the condensation forms on the windshield, and if you don't have a good defogger, it's hard to clear. And it's amazing. The team will say, I'll just keep going, and it's like it's trying to shave in your bathroom in the morning, and you can't see anything if it's fogged up. It's really a cutthroat business out there, and it's awfully tough. JB, you obviously couldn't see this morning.
I couldn't see this morning. You can see my little scruff going on. Let's take another look at it. Coming down here, there's a lot of water just as you turn in. He just
basically went straight.
Just
he couldn't see the corner.
Point.
Just couldn't see the corner.
tell you what, if that was anything other than a Viper, that splitter would have come off.
And you brought up a great point, JB, about the gentleman drivers or the Pro-Am drivers starting the cars. The reason being, from a strategy standpoint, those drivers have to do a minimum drive time today of 2.5 hours to score points. Typically, you knew it was going to start like this in the wet. The rain has been forecast all weekend long, so you'd say, well, start your pro in the car, make sure he gets through those first laps and keep it clean. But they're so really focused on that drive time. You want to get it knocked out as soon as you can in this race. Then you're in a point-scoring position. Then you can go race. So that's why we're seeing some of the Pro-Am drivers in the start of this race and maybe struggling a bit more.
And the weather will be a factor in that little strategic decision as well. You can't know whether we're going to go 10 hours for sure. So you've still got to make that minimum drive time.
That question came up in the drivers' meeting last night from Kevin Buckler. He said they were talking about the various scenarios if we have to go red flag or if it's a shortened race. They said, what about the minimum drive time? Because if you play a strategy where you put your Pro-Am guy in first to knock that out, you're going to be probably a little deeper in the field. Whereas someone else starts their pro, they're going to be higher placed. Suddenly it gets red flagged and called. Well, they're in a better position because they haven't really run to the minimum drive time requirements. So there's a lot of moving targets here this weekend.
And a lot of consideration about it overnight, I'm sure. We're watching here the leaders in GTLM, and I tell you what, Oliver Gavin and Lucas Law are laying down a series of laps that are dramatically impressive in these conditions. I can only use the benchmark really as the pace of the Porsches, who are a couple of tenths behind to a second behind, depending on the clear on the lap in terms of lap time. I use Porsche right now as the benchmark, probably as outright performance, as does everyone else. These guys in the wet are able to maintain their gap. I tell you, that's very impressive. And the pressure on Oliver Gavin with Lucas right up his chuff there is Lucas wants to take the lead in this class for all the reasons you just detailed.
Yeah, well, it's huge. As we talked about the championship in GTLM, the 25 cars in the Drivers' Championship, obviously, if they win the race today with Oberlin and Dirk Werner, they will clinch the Drivers' Championship as well as the manufacturers. But if they do not have a good day, it's now onto the 24 car, the black car with John Edwards, Lucas Luhr and Klingsman here this weekend to really get the job done. If they win, BMW will still take that manufacturer's crown, and that is huge, as Jamie said at the top of the show.
How many times do you think these two guys have raced each other around the world over the years? I mean, two veterans. Lucas Luhr, I believe I'm correct in saying, was the winningest driver in the history of the old American Le Mans series.
Absolutely, by a long ways.
Yeah, and it's really like watching a great game of top singles men's tennis when it's bang, bang, a long rally, they're hitting the ball. That's how these guys are going at it. But let's go back to the manufacturer thing. Corvette, BMW, you've got Porsche out there. The manufacturers are here spending worldwide on their motorsport programs hundreds of millions of dollars. This represents a significant investment on behalf of the manufacturers. Going racing is no light decision, and it also filters all the way through. Half the fans here up there as you drive in are from the Corvette or the Porsche club. The corrals are still full. It doesn't matter that it rained today. They're full of these rabid fans out there, all who want to see these cars win, so then they can go and buy the latest version on the road. That is the business of motorsport, literally in action in the wet here.
Now the pace in the GTLM class has been amazing. Gavin, Luhr, Bamber, Tandy, and Garcia run 5th through 9th. Corvettes, BMWs, and Porsche 911s. We'll be back. Back at Road Atlanta in the Petit Le Mans, powered by Mazda. Looking at Richard Westbrook at work in his office in the VisitFlorida.com Corvette Daytona prototype. Took pole for the race and has led since the green flag, and you see a lot of crossing of arms in there.
Yeah, looked like a lot of understeer on the car going through turn 7. Tightest corner and slowest corner on the racetrack there, but Westy looks in complete control. He's got his championship contender right behind him there, and a little bit further back, Dane Cameron in the sister Action Express car. So, as we said before, Action Express have got the job done before. They know how to win this title, and they're going to put the pressure on the 90, but the 90 realize the podium finish here today will clinch, so they've just got to be smart. Even as Fittipaldi gets to him and starts to put the pressure on, Westy has to be thinking about the big picture.
Yeah, and you can see it in the driving, but the driving from both he and Christian, really, I think, in the fact that, you know, they'll know right now where their cars are on the track, how they feel, where the water is. But like that understeer, Calvin, you actually could feel it on his behalf, you know, as that means, you know, the push, understeer, you turn the wheel, the front wheel still keep going in the direction of the energy of the car rather than where you want it to go. But that is actually a very known quantity as a driver in the wet, and you'd rather that than the back slipping out and sliding away from you. These prototypes, obviously the dynamics of them very stiff, and in the dry that allows them to be superbly fast with the downforce they create. But in the wet, it makes them very nervous in standing water. But they're heading out to the back of the track there, down that back straight. Really, that's their only chance to probably relax their hands a bit.
Chevrolet-powered Daytona prototypes running 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the overall and in the prototype class. Let's go to Jamie Howe.
It has been quite a weekend for Chevrolet, Bob, and as Jim Campbell, the Vice President in the United States for Vehicle Performance as well as Motorsports, you know, you guys have been out here all season long to get the Continental Tire GS Manufacturers title, to have the Prototype Manufacturers title. What does that mean to this company?
Well, it's a result of a lot of hard work with our race teams. We're so proud of the work they've done with Chevrolet, all of our powertrain engineers, all our engineers that are here on site. Really, really, it's a team effort. We can't do it without great teams, great drivers.
When you lock up these kinds of championships, when you're still in the battle today in GTLM, where does a brand like Chevrolet go next? What else do you want?
Well, we have a lot of work to do here. Obviously, in the prototype category, we got a couple Corvette teams that are fighting for that drivers' championship, and we thank them for bringing that manufacturers' championship to Chevrolet. In the GTLM, it's a battle, and on a day like this, anything can happen. We're a little bit behind right now, Porsche and BMW, but I believe in these guys right here. We'll see what happens.
Guys, just take a look right behind them at all of these people who are in here working today to try and get this to happen. Pretty cool. Chris?
Well, Jamie, in June, it was Ford and Chip Ganassi Racing announcing that they are going back to Le Mans in 2016 with the Ford GT, 50 years after they won overall with the MK2. And Dave Pericek is in charge of that program for Ford. Dave, the car's been testing in the U.S., Canada, and recently in France. How's that development going?
Well, development's going very well. The car's performing as expected, and in some cases even better than expected. So we're really excited to get that car out on the track.
Now, Carroll Shelby beat the Ferraris back in '66 with Bruce McLaren and Chris Amon. It was obviously a 3-year experience to try and get that overall win. What are your expectations for 2016?
Well, I mean, obviously we want to go back and prove to the world that we've got the best supercar out there. It's a tall task to say you're going to go back and win Le Mans, but I'll tell you this, we're going to go back and give it one hell of a try.
Well, they brought that car here this weekend, so if you're one of the fans at the racetrack, you could go by the Ford tent and check out that GT.
It is an awesome car. As you look at Ford's greatest days at the greatest sports car race on the planet,
Joey handed a few laps in the car down at one of the tests at Sebring. He said the car feels really correct. He said gearbox feels great. He said the quality of the car is unbelievable. And he said, obviously, I know the engine very well because that's what's powering the car right now, as we see on screen, the 01, the 3.5-liter EcoBoost twin-turbo engine. So they've got a lot of data now from running it in the Daytona prototype. It should be seamless in that transition to the GT car.
Pulls out of the slipstream of one of the BMW GTLM cars. Alternator problems and electrical issues plagued this car early on. As you watch this car, look at the water just streaming out of every crack in the bodywork, through the wheel wells. It's a wonder these cars work at all in these conditions.
Yeah, it's quite amazing, really. And you can see there that the GTLM car has a lot of low grip speed. I mean, mechanically, the GT car's a little softer, it's more compliant to the road, JB, and that gives you the grip in the tighter corners.
Well, you see it, actually, I bet if we were able to overlay corner segment times, the tight corners, the GTLM cars will be significantly quicker than these prototypes, especially almost getting the power down as they come off, the rolling speed through the middle, and definitely maybe their braking point to apex. They, as you say, a lot more roll, allows the cars to be a bit more compliant in the wet. But right now, as you're watching the 911 there go through, I mean, they've got some...
to the lead.
To the lead, yeah.
Not bad, eh?
Not a bad thing. Where do they start again? Didn't we see it literally tailing this field?
Tandy went out yesterday in qualifying and was just simply spectacular. He ultimately finished second in the qualifying session. Obviously, the Porsche got pushed to the back after quali, but I mean, his first lap out, you're just looking at it, it's like the ability to read the limit that quickly, not going out for 2 or 3 laps, kind of feeling your way around. He just went out and was on it, some 3 or 4 seconds quicker than the rest of the field on the first couple of laps.
Tandy, a former winner of this race in that 17 car, Falcon Tire Porsche 911 RSR. Just like that, we're over 35 minutes into this race. A 10-hour classic. We'll be back to Road Atlanta. Fox Sports Go is where we'll be sending you at the top of the hour as we make way for NASCAR Camping World Truck Series final practice action from Las Vegas Motor Speedway, so stand by for that. Meanwhile, the action continues in these sopping wet conditions. The Petit Le Mans, powered by Mazda, final event of the Tudor United SportsCar Championship season for 2015, and everything is at stake.
It really is, and I spoke to Westy last night, and he said the car felt great in qualifying. He said Michael and Rocky seemed really comfortable in the wet conditions as well. So the driver lineup is stout. The car has been running strong, and I think what they're looking for now is for these conditions to remain constant. Suddenly, if it did dry out, then it's a variable where maybe your car performance may not match the rest of the field. So right now, they're in great shape, but they've still got to, minimize the risk.
A little bit further back, the Taylor family Konica Minolta Corvette Daytona prototype runs in 4th place. Here's Chris.
And that's Ricky Taylor behind the wheel. Jordan Taylor's brother back here at the hauler, trying to stay dry and also watching our broadcast. Now, Jordan, one thing that we're really following here is the visibility on the racetrack. So tough to see out there. As a driver, how difficult is it to see the puddles, the racetrack, the paint on the racetrack?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. You've seen all during practice and qualifying, guys have been going off, all over the place. So right now it's just survival. I think Ricky's just kind of cruising right now. It's a 10-hour race. They could cut it short so you can't cruise too much, but as for right now, we're just kind of trying to stay out of trouble. I mean, you saw in qualifying, Sellers just barely touched the curb with maybe an inch of the tire, and it sent him off. There's a huge puddle at the bottom of the S's that's caught about 3 guys out, even in the race and in practice this morning. So it's just survival at this point, and trying to get to at least the halfway mark where they could call at the end, or see how far we can go.
Well, so much water can get in the cockpit of these cars. In a hot race car, you not only have a visor on, but you're also going to have glasses on. Is that a challenge?
It is. I mean, thankfully we have a good helmet blower, and we've got a heated windscreen in our Corvette, so that should prevent any fogging on the windshield, and hopefully our helmet blower works and my glasses won't fog up and I can see where I'm going.
All right, thanks very much, guys. And Justin, he raises a good point. He talked about Brian Sellers' error in qualifying. When someone has something like that, do the other drivers come running up to ask him exactly what he did and what happened? And
there is that. There's also, I don't kind of want to get too close in case the same thing happens to me. You want to learn, but at the same time, you just have to trust that you won't put your car in the same place. It's a weird sort of knowledge. Drivers are more interested. Did you hit water? Did you hit gravel? Was there something there? But it was quite obvious on the monitor that Brian just was on the paint by a couple of inches. I think it just reinforces what you already know, Bob, and that's like, don't touch them. Do you know one of the funniest old ways of cleaning the windshield that I ever got told by my dear old friend, founding friend Buzz Marcus, was he used to wipe a bar of soap on the inside of his windshield, and it would streak it, but it would actually be able to, it would actually stop you fogging up. Of course, if it goes wrong, you have lots of bubbles, but you smell good. There's many old wives' tales on how you should keep your windshield clear.
And I think the key is, Bob, is, Jordan's been watching the telecast. He's interested in the race, certainly, but you can learn a lot. You can see where the water is gathering. You can see where guys are having problems, not just in your category of car, but everyone. You can see where you can maybe pass in traffic, where the GTD cars may be a little bit slower. You can take advantage of that. So you learn a lot from observing during race conditions like this. They saw a lot in qualifying. People would make a note of the cars that were going off in the qualifying session. You don't want to make the same mistake.
I think if we're interesting point in the race coming up, though, Calvin, in the fact that we're starting to get, in dry conditions, we'll be near a fuel window right now, right? We'll be in a fuel window. How are they calculating that? It isn't like they have a fuel gauge in the car. They do have telemetry. They are showing a fuel consumption rate, correct? But actual on-time full throttle is so little in the wet. Very hard to gauge, right? Do you think they'll err on the side of caution in the first stint?
Certainly on the first stint. I mean, it's not like Le Mans where if you get it wrong, you're probably not going to make it back. There's a reserve on these cars that will allow you to get it back to pit lane. So you don't want to certainly stretch it too far, but you're going to learn as you go. You'll see what is the pace, what sort of mileage did that give us. But each driver is different too. You see in the dry, slightly different fuel mileage being achieved by different drivers and how they approach the wet conditions. We talk about Scott Pruitt, one of the fastest in the business, but he uses that go-kart style of blap, blap, blap on the throttle through the corners. He burns a lot of fuel. Scott Dixon, his teammate this weekend, is one of the best. He learned that from the IndyCar days when it was so important to save fuel. So there's different extremes, different conditions, different drivers. You said we're going to be on our toes, and probably the engineer is the one who's most on his toes today.
Tell you who's driving with the toes of a very fine ballet dancer right now is Cameron Lawrence, isn't he? Look at him just drifting that Viper out there to the edge. Impressive run. I don't really know that much about him, but as you said, he's come on the radar quite strong in the last 12 months.
He's an amazing young kid. He really represents himself very, very well. He's a good-looking kid. He's an All-American boy. He's on the verge of his 3rd Trans Am title this year. He just won a race at VIR in very similar conditions. They put him in the car for qualifying yesterday, and what a statement he made by stealing that pole on the very last lap away from Spencer Pumpelly and Lee Keen. And you see him now, very comfortable running this car out front. He's won 2 races this year in that car. A lot of talent behind the wheel.
Front runners in class in the Tequila Patron North American Endurance Cup, honoring the most successful teams in each of the 4 classes over the 4 longest events of the season. The Rolex 24 at Daytona, the Mobil 1 12 hours of Sebring, 6 hours of Watkins Glen, and this event, the Petit Le Mans at Road Atlanta.
See him there as he comes over the hill there, exiting turn 11 under the bridge. Just gives himself a little bit of a margin there. He's giving himself a couple of feet, so he's running very competitive lap times compared to the rest of the field. He's got the lead of the race, but he's not pushing things. He's not right out there on the white line. He's got a little bit of room. If the car slips a bit further, you got that margin there to work with.
Great big powerful car. Moments ago, Cameron Lawrence made a bit of an adjustment right there off turn number 6, I believe.
Yeah, what do you got to be careful there? 7. What do you has to be careful? We saw a couple of accidents in the wet in practice where it would just hook up and go in the wall on the other side. But admittedly not by people of his caliber.
No traction control on the GTD cars this year, but next year we move to the new GT3 platform, which is very exciting. So many brands are showing interest in coming to this championship next year in the GTD class with the GT3 platform. They will have all of the gizmos, all of the drive aids. They're an unbelievable race car. Really sexy looking. It's an exciting year ahead for GTD.
Just a couple moments ago, you saw the number 54 of John Bennett out there. He's 1 lap down right now, but he has championship on his mind. You guys mentioned the minimum drive time is 2.5 hours. John is actually going to stay behind the wheel for the first 2.5 hours of this race, so it's going to be his longest stint ever. When you think that our normal race length is only 2 hours and 45 minutes, so he's going to be in the car for a long time. The prototype challenge cars, they don't have traction control. They don't have a cover over their head, so it's grueling out there right now, but he's thinking championship, guys.
Yeah, once he does that, all that needs to happen then, Jamie, is Colin Brown does 1 lap and the championship is theirs. So it'll be their 2nd consecutive championship, and they've done a great job this year. The rest of the field in PC, I believe, has caught up a little bit, Justin. They used to have it all their own way. It's so competitive now, so this championship will mean a lot.
Such a nice pairing, such a nice group of guys, such a great team. And, you know, they do race for their wins, though. I mean, this category is not a gimme. It's amazing that when you get to the end of the series and you trace end of the season in all 4 classes and you trace back through the year, races where you could have clinched it. Literally, those points are so important, or the points you lost. And every team out here right now
says the same.
Says the same. Oh my God! If only we hadn't done that at VIR. No, very interesting. I'm intrigued how much they run that inside right curb there. You know what I mean? They really do bang across that, don't they?
Yeah, and we talk about staying off the painted white curbing. It does give you much grip, but that's the unloaded part of the corner. What you will not see the guys do too much, typically, is run on the exit of the corners, like coming here off of turn 5. You get up on that curb there, when you power down, boy, oh boy, you're going to go for a ride.
Yeah.
Everybody's settling in now as we approach the end of the first of 10 hours in this event. Until last year, this event used to be 10 hours or 1,000 miles, whichever was reached first. And of course, we reached 1,000 miles long before the 10-hour mark, but then last year, it became purely a timed affair.
On board here with Richard Westbrook, you see the eyes, quick glance in the mirror to see who's close behind him as he accelerates off of turn 7. And then you see the compression in the body as he hits the brakes, even in the wet conditions here, JB. A lot of G-forces. You hit the middle pedal there to slow it down for turn 10 as he's going through right now. Then up and through. He's under the bridge there, looking ahead, trying to look over the crest as he goes, and then plowing down through that final turn, turn 12, onto this front straightaway.
Looks so calm, so collected. I'm sure Richard is.
He's not very collected on the golf course.
We did a lot of collecting of balls.
You never miss a moment. 911 Porsche, the factory car out of John Bennett's shops for Autosport in South Carolina, taking the lead in GTLM over Lucas Luhr in the BMW Z4 for Bobby Rahall's team. Here's a look at where we stand as we get ready to send you out for truck action from Las Vegas International. Westbrook, Michael Valiente, and Mike Rockenfeller, third driver brought in for the occasion. You see most of the teams have 3 and even 4 drivers. They'll need everybody they can get for this 10 hours in these weather conditions before the championships are decided in the Tudor United Sports Car Championship. Our coverage will continue on Fox Sports Go. You can also go to IMSA TV at the IMSA.com website. But right now, we're going to send you to Las Vegas Motor Speedway and Ralph Shaheen. Take it away, Ralph. And if you're watching us on Fox Sports Go, thanks for joining us. Well, remember, all 10 hours of this Petit Le Mans powered by Mazda will be coming your way on some combination of FS2, Fox Sports Go, and IMSA.com. This is the 18th annual Petit Le Mans powered by Mazda. From Road Atlanta, I'm Bob Varsha with Calvin Fish, Justin Bell, Chris Neville, and Jamie Howe down to the pit lane. And there is Richard Westbrook, who took pole for this race and has led from the green flag.
He really has done a tremendous job. Right now, he has just under a 10-second lead over Christian Fittipaldi, with his Action Express teammate Dane Cameron sitting in the 3rd spot. So these are the top 3 players in the championship right now. We talked about the dark horse being the 0-1 machine. Joey Hand had to serve a penalty for starting the car from pit lane. That's the procedure. He had to roll through, so he's a bit deeper in the pack, currently sitting in the 5th position. And it doesn't seem like that Ford with the turbo is quite as suited to these conditions. With a normally aspirated Chevy, it's easy to put the power down smoothly with that turbo. It's not like the old days with a big turbo lag, Justin, certainly, but certainly the engine management is not quite as good.
We saw it in qualifying, I think. You're watching Joey come through there, and obviously in medium to high-speed corners, it will not be an issue. But it's really, well, it's just the gap. These cars are so close. Just getting off turn 7 is enough, and turn 9, 10. You lose 2 tenths there. That's as far apart as these guys are at the top of the field. And obviously, you know, Joey's a guy that can lay it down in any condition, the ultimate lap time. And when he's struggling a bit in the wet, you know, the car isn't, maybe the engine combination isn't quite suited. Over the long run here, don't think it's going to be a big factor for them. But, you know, these drivers know these cars and they're brilliant. But look at them. Look at the way right now. It looked to me like the weather might have got a bit worse there. The car was definitely seeking for a slightly dry line through the bad weather. But
yeah, we understand there is heavier rain in the area, so things could get worse any minute now. And I've got to say, I've been doing, oh boy, one of the GTD Ferraris there in red and white, the Sonic Tools car, got all kinds of crazy, not only trying to slowed down for the corner, but to get out of the way of the faster prototypes around it.
The second of the Scuderia Corsa cars that were entered here this weekend, and number 64, currently driven by Brazilian Daniel Serra. He's the son of former F1 driver back in the early 80s, Chico Serra. And really nice young man, very quick, and great to see those Scuderia Corsa cars running well. Jeff Siegel has the 63 car, which is in championship contention. JB in the 4th spot has had a really solid run, and when you're brought in as that 3rd drive, you've had it happen to you. It's like the responsibility is huge. You've got your 2 teammates on the verge of a championship. You got to come in. You don't have the regular seat. A lot of pressure, particularly in these conditions.
A lot of pressure to start the race. That's the biggest thing. It's like, you know, we're bringing you in. We know you're a great compliment. Obviously, Bill Sweedler has, I mean, I have to say, I think for me, he has the most improved award out of the Pro-Am drivers this year. He's just driven extraordinarily well. Townsend Bell, as you know, he's a flat-out chap all the time. And but to come in and them being up for the championship, and you're the one that can really mess it up for them before they even have a chance.
Oh,
912 off.
912 is
Bamba.
I don't think he got to the tire wall.
Yeah, but he's deep in that gravel, and that is going to be miserable.
6th in class. Started at the back, remember.
It recently made a pit stop. They don't have any telemetry, Jamie told us. From
what do you want me to do? Try and get out. If you can't, they'll tow you out.
We understand they were having overheating problems. Took some tape off the radiators. And with that, we have our 2nd full course caution. I'm tempted to say only our 2nd full course caution. And I think the 31 was committed.
Okay, into pit. Looked like it.
Great
I don't know. You can't see your...
Great strategy there by the 31. Did they beat the commit line before the pit close light came on? If they roll through, if they believe they're good, they'll service him and have no penalty. When you go full course yellow, pit lane is initially closed to basically group everyone together, get it safe, but 31 is in. Jamie's there.
And it looks like it's going to be fuel only for Dane Cameron. I don't see any of the Continental Rain tires out on the wall right now. When he came to pit lane, he was 4th. Mechanic at the front right now waiting for this fuel to be complete, so I don't think they're going to take any tires. He is already out. Like, come on. I already saw the number 31 come around the corner, Cal, so I think they made it.
Yeah, I think they're good, and that's just a call that sometimes the driver will be allowed to make. If you get that, notice that there's a car off, we're going to go yellow. If you can get to the pit lane before the pit lane is closed, do it. For the leaders, they already by the pit entrance. They did not have that option.
You see, the reason you get stuck so easily in this gravel, I mean, we were standing out in it was kind of slightly humorously at the start of the show with our different altitudes there, Calvin. But, you know, when you're stuck in it, it's the bottom of the car. You get hooked up on it. And just watch him now as he comes in.
It early. I think he might have cut down tire. That car is crabbing really badly. I think he might have cut down a tire. Did you notice coming in, JB?
Yeah, absolutely I did. But
the yaw of the car was very weird.
Watch his hands.
And you're absolutely right, guys. I was listening on the radio. Earl radioed back after the contact saying it was the left rear tire that went down, so the team's ready for him on pit lane with a fresh set of Michelins.
Yeah, that was not driver error. You could see there he was correcting it in a straight line before he even started to turn into the corner.
But that, like we said, look at that. Yeah, contact caused that. We haven't seen who with yet. Maybe Jamie gets a bit of insight to that. But, you know, we talked about it.
Just the rib.
We talked about it, Calvin, in the fact that that was basically a pretty the crash damaged the wheel, tire went down. On some tracks you would have been able just to hold it. Other corners on this track you would have been in the pits by now and already changing it. But because of the nature of the surface here, the water, you're off into this terrible gravel.
I don't think there's curbing. I don't think, unless it was on the straightaway, they got on the curbing early, because there's no real curbing, I don't believe, at the point of entry into turn 1 here where he's gone off.
Oh, no.
So I don't know whether it damaged the rim before then, and that's why the tire went down. But typically you'll say, oh, there's a puncture, there's rim damage. Well, the rim damage happened after the tire went down and he's on the deck. Let's take another look here. Watch the attitude of the car suddenly change. Right about there. There you can see the yaw in the car. He's got his arms crossed. And right as he goes off the road there, there's not a lot of curbing, but maybe just the drop-off was enough to damage that rim.
Yeah, I actually think, Calvin, you saw him, it looks that kind of rim damage means someone hit him or he hit them somewhere earlier on. I mean, he definitely was radioing in that he had a flat tire.
Maybe weakened the rim in a way.
But, yeah, I mean, that's pretty significant. Those rims are quite tough.
And again, they don't have the telemetry working on that machine, so they wouldn't have had the tire pressure sensors and stuff. The alarms would have probably been on the car, I believe, still to give the driver indication that he had a problem. He knew it when it went down. It's pretty instant.
You mean opposite lock in a straight line?
Yeah,
that always gives it away.
Good thing,
so what does that do for everyone? Obviously, the 31 has really stolen a march there. Dane Cameron is definitely going to benefit. We do have on the radar, as you can see, a lot of weather, and it's coming in from over here, and there's the track there. So we're in for some more heavier rain. You're going to see cars come in, obviously. Calvin, what about drivers? Would you keep them in because they understand the conditions? It's not physically hard, but I'll tell you from experience, it's bloody mentally hard.
Your eyes are on stalks, you know what I mean, in terms of looking ahead and reading the road. So I think a lot will just depend how the driver's feeling. I think when we get to those minimum drive time requirements in GTD and PC, we've already heard that John Bennett's going to try and do the first 2.5 hours of this race. So I think in those two classes, you'll probably see guys stay in if they started their Pro-Am guide. I think in the other classes, maybe you'll see some driver changes here.
Something else you might have noticed on that map was racetracks. I'm kind of proud of the fact that I live here in Atlanta, and just about any kind of organized motorsport you want to see, you can see in this area. In addition to Road Atlanta, you got the big speedways, Atlanta Motor Speedway south of town, Talladega off there in the western Alabama, where you'll also find Barber Motorsports Park, a terrific road course. Atlanta Dragway is here, a handful of short tracks, paved and dirt. If you like motorsports, this is a neat part of the country to live in. Jet dryers out there, along with the Porsche Rapid Response vehicle. We'll re-rack here at the end of the first hour. And I have to say, it's been kind of a car control masterclass. We've had, what, 2 reasonably big offs, and that's it despite these just drenching conditions.
Well, the good and the bad news is that we've had a lot of this track condition this weekend, so it's not like they just thrown this curveball at the last minute. The bad news is there has been so much rain. We talk about the runoff areas absorbing more rain, and it basically just ends up on the racetrack pretty immediately. But I tell you what's impressive here, looking at these early laps, is overall the GTLM car of Nick Tandy is legitimately in the top 5. We just saw Dane Cameron pit, so he's dropped behind him, but yeah, Tandy was running in the 5th spot. He's now in the 4th spot, and that's really a testimony. Not only we talked about the mechanical grip of a GT car, also that Michelin wet is really, really strong.
Yeah, I mean, I've raced on it extensively. I can tell you, there's moments that you truly understand and appreciate how good your tires are, and that'll be on the straight at Le Mans in the dark in the pouring rain. That'll be going through turn 1 here and down through those S's. The Michelin engineers, the way they work, the feedback, the technology, all through the year we've had these amazing reports from Jamie on the way they transfer that technology from the teams all the way back to their engineers. Very, very impressive tires.
Yeah, we should point out that these cars have been lapping 4 to 6 seconds quicker than the number 17, a similar 911 RSR in these conditions. Those factory Porsches are using the 2015 World Endurance Championship rain tire. The first time they've been on that tire this year. Obviously, it's a pretty effective piece.
All of these guys are coming because they're pretty close. We'd heard the 01 radio in. They were within 10 laps of pitting anyway, so it's a no-brainer. You're going to see everyone who has not seen pit lane yet today come on in and top up. Didn't see tires on the 31 car. Let's see what the 10 car does. Here's our leader, Richard Westbrook. He's going for a fresh set of Continental tires. Westy's going to stay in. Looks like Christian is staying in the 5 car. Don't see any other drivers up on the pit wall. Chris?
Well, Calvin, you were talking about mental fatigue. Ricky Taylor giving the teams the thumbs up that he wanted to stay in the car, but he has been complaining in this first hour of racing that he hasn't been able to attack the racetrack like he was on Thursday or Friday in the rain. I checked in with the team, and they said they started the pressures about 6 pounds lower than they normally would, so they're putting him back to where they were on Thursday or Friday, hoping to give him a little bit more car. Jamie?
Well, both the 90 and the 5 were in. You guys in the booth, you saw it from up there. Very standard pit stops, new tires and fuel going in. The 90 also was first out of pit lane.
Westy seems on a mission. I don't think he was even thinking about letting Christian sneak ahead of him there. He's got the eye on the prize here today. I love to see it.
Yeah, I wonder, I mean, and Jamie, obviously, and Jamie's down there with Chris getting good feedback and reading how the mechanics are in the pits, but this is very demanding on them too. Remember, they're drenched pretty much, and they have to get those pit stops just as accurately, but everything's wet, the gun's wet, they're picking up the tires is wet, they can slip, it's a very treacherous, demanding environment, and we've seen mistakes made and positions lost in the pits all throughout the years, throughout the season, and that's only going to be exaggerated today.
I think we talked about the fact that the 31 car took that opportunity to pit just before the pit lane was closed. I think when we cycle through here, this full caution period, the 31 car should end up at the front of the pack.
Nice. 912 just entered a closed pit, so there'll be consequences for that. There's the 31, which will probably ratchet through to the race lead. By the way, on that driver strength, 3rd driver in with Dane Cameron and Eric Kirk this weekend, our old friend Max Pappas. Mad Max is celebrating a birthday today, I believe, so we want to wish him the best.
Yeah, ridiculously.
Range where you don't really say what it is.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm not going there.
And he's too big. He's too big. Why would he bring it up?
You don't want to see him tomorrow and say what was that all about.
One of everybody's favorite people.
31 car has been called good in terms of making that pit lane call. Now the 912, they're down there. Let's get to Jamie.
Yeah, you mentioned they came in when the pit lane was closed. The rule is that you can do that, but you can do emergency service, which would have been replacing the tire that was flat, that left rear. However, the team did do full service, so they're going to have to serve a penalty for that. They're going to have to come back to pit lane at the end of all of this caution period, so they are going to lose some more time. Meanwhile, though, we have the rest of the GTLM field and GTD making it to pit lane, including the leading number 911. Looks like it's going to be normal service right now. No driver change, 4 new Michelin tires out over the wall. This team, even though they had to start at the back, we've seen it all season long, they're magical in coming through the traffic. They're also on a mission for this championship. Chris?
Jamie, we see Giancarlo Fisichella hopping over the wall down here in pit lane. Just brought the Risi Ferrari 458 to pit lane, and checking in with the team, Pierre Caffer getting behind the wheel. They said no issues with that car. It's running great on the racetrack. Visibility is very good out of that Ferrari. However, the main issue, just lots of aquaplaning. There's so much water on the racetrack. Right now, they're just trying to play this game really smart, keep it on the road.
We saw the 912 had to stop at the pit exit because the field was coming by behind the pace car. You do not want to run that red light. I was worried about a big backup of cars there, but the tail of the field got by, and the 912 able to regain the racetrack before the field stacked up behind him in the pit lane. Those all those fans. There are fans all the way around this racetrack. Many of them camped out through torrential rains over the last 2 nights. So we want to take our hats off to them. This is always a very popular race. Tens of thousands of fans around this 2.5-mile track, and they have been put through a lot this weekend. So if you're listening to us on scanners, give us a wave. Thanks for being out here. And of course, thanks also to the SCCA track workers and corner marshals working here at Road Atlanta. Couldn't do it without them.
Well, this has become such a popular event, Bob, and we're in our 1998 was the first one, and people now put it on their calendar. They love to be here. Last year, I mean, we had perfect, glorious conditions, and the sight of the pre-grid was just amazing. That massive throng of people, and it was just beautiful to watch. And it's just disappointing. I mean, I love the conditions. It really throws us a curveball in the race and something to call, JB. But for the fans, it's going to certainly deter a lot of people from being here today.
The ones who stayed overnight had no option but to be here this morning. You know, it's always walk-in traffic as a promoter. You always want the public to wake up in the morning and go, it's a sunny morning, let's go to a race. This race is a big enough draw that I think you'll find a lot of people are here to watch it today. But also a quick shout out, these pictures you're watching are obviously brought to you by our crew who are out there. They have been suiting up every morning, haven't they, Bob? You see them putting on their very well-weathered waterproof gear to head out there, and it's interesting to me because most of them are a little more mature. There's Tess. She's not mature, she's just young and enthusiastic standing out there, but there are a couple of the other guys look like they've been doing this for 100 years, and when I asked him, he said, oh yeah, he said, this is as bad as it gets.
Well, it's like race cars. It's not the years, it's the miles.
Yeah.
Well, this guy's famous.
Yeah, Ray's.
Follow him on Twitter.
Internet sensation.
Rooftop Ray.
Yeah.
All night long at Daytona International Speedway, that's Ray up on the roof.
They make Ray wear a cap because if it's sunny out, the shine off his head can actually blind the drivers down here in turn 1.
That's a fact. Yeah. Look at Westbrook. You see, look at the concentration even behind the pace car, because you can go off, as we saw in practice, people go off, and we saw in one of the races yesterday, you can go off behind the yellow. So the lights have gone out on the safety car. He will be thinking about how he wants to make his way through, but Dane Cameron in front. That was a nice piece of pit strategy.
Yeah, I mean, good call, and sometimes you got to be lucky too. You got to be in the right spot on the racetrack. The leaders had passed pit in, so they didn't have the opportunity.
There's Brian Sellers in the 17. Anybody looking for a turnkey race team to go racing in a state-of-the-art Porsche 911 RSR?
It's an awesome team.
There's one you can buy into.
Led by Derek Walker and Phil Howard, the team manager. That doesn't get any better than this group. What they've achieved against some of the big names in motorsport is truly phenomenal. 6 wins over the years, 2 here and consecutively at Petit, and it'll be a shame to not see them on the grid next year.
And everybody here would love them to have a good result.
Yes.
This weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Even their competitors would like to see them have a good result here. What a pairing that has been. And certainly we've seen some epic racing on behalf of Porsche as a brand, which is really nice for this team, not just the factory cars.
You see the Delta Wing pulling into the fast lane behind the 17.
They were really quick in dry practice the other day. They did a lot of testing here and were running right on the track record in testing. They were pretty bullish when we spoke to them at COTA, and even in the wet conditions this morning, Andy Merrick was pretty fast.
As the safety car comes off.
Green, 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 green.
We're green once again.
Spencer Pampelli led the field back to green. You could have a class leader, not necessarily the overall leader, lead you back to green. That was Spencer in GTD. And then you see Dane Cameron now has got the lead due to that strategy, and Westbrook sits in the 2nd spot.
Yeah, Wesley didn't waste any time going by, though, did he? Slid down the inside. He knows he's got the pace to lead the field, and Dane Cameron Well, he's also got the pace to lead the field, so let's see how it works out as everyone is working their way through 3 different categories there.
Joey Hand aggressive as ever in the 01, the Ford for Team Ganassi.
Tandy right there as well, making moves around the outside in the S's. I mean, you've got to have confidence, grip, and skill to make that happen.
There's Joey. He'll be sharing with Scott Pruitt, and talk about bringing in a heavyweight. How about Scott Dixon, 4-time IndyCar champion, 2008 Indy 500 winner, and a part of the driving strength that won this year's Rolex 24 at Daytona.
We talk about the 01 being an outside shot for the championship. For that to happen, they need to first win, and then they need the 90 out of the top 6. But there's almost the perfect symmetry, Bob, to how they won the IndyCar title this year. Last race at Sonoma Raceway, Dixon won. Pip Montoya, who finished 6th. So it's almost, if they could mirror that, they could maybe steal this at the end of the day.
God, Joey's being so aggressive. He was through those end couple of series. Right-hand corners coming down the hill here. He's braking right at the last minute, but Jordan certainly is not, Ricky, sorry, is not letting him make it easy there.
Yeah, and watch this. Oh, look at that. Nick Tandy, we talk about the grip in the low-speed corners. Tandy was going to come. Joey sets him up and gets the acceleration down and passes Ricky under the bridge.
Wow, what an exchange that was.
Well, Joey tried to set up wide, and suddenly Tandy said, I'll have some of that.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
Right.
We're going to leave that door open. Man, we are now officially in the 2nd hour of a 10-hour race.
Nick Tandy just goes by Ricky Taylor through turn 1 because, you know, out of the box, you talk about Nick's ability to kick it off straight without any warm-up at all. And I think we're seeing that in action right now.
I think when you've been around the game as long as we all have, you kind of get blasé about drivers in their skill. But now and again, you see someone who comes on the scene who really grabs your attention, and Nick Tandy is one of those special guys. I mean, he just excels. You talk to other Porsche factory guys, they said, man, he is something special.
Chris.
Well, guys, we're watching that 10 car getting passed by the GTLM car, and just checking with the team again, they said, hey, he's just trying to get used to this new tire pressure. They made a significant change. They started this race at 24 PSI. They just went out, changed that to 30 PSI, so that's a real significant change to that car, and they're just telling Ricky, take your time, get used to it, and then start racing again.
Well, that changes 2 things. By going up, it almost changes like the spring rate of the car, how stiff it will feel, because the tire is basically almost like a spring, JB, and also it's going to change the footprint of the tire on the road. So he's doing the right thing. If it doesn't feel right to him right now, don't push it, don't fall off the road, settle back in, long way to go, and then we can either make another adjustment, go back in the other direction, or you can get used to how it feels.
In the window of the car, passenger side, you see a bright red 5. That's the leader light system. It's red on the prototypes and GTLM cars, blue on the prototype challenge and GTD cars, and that gives you that car's position in class. The 5 means that Ricky is running 5th in prototype.
So if you want indication of how fast GTLM can run, for all the reasons we've discussed, right now our race leader, Dane Cameron, just ran his last lap at 1:30.3, and Nick Tandy ran a 1:30.2. So, you know, that shows the pace of these top GTLM cars in these conditions.
And that could go on all day long.
All day long.
I mean, they're going to be focused on their class battle. There's a lot on the lines we mentioned, particularly between the BMWs and the Porsches, with the Corvettes with an outside shot at it. But they won't be worried about the overall, but that would be the icing on the cake if they could stand on the overall podium as well.
You understand the 912 Porsche is going to get a stop plus 60-second hold for working on the car in a closed pit.
And Jamie said it perfectly in that report. If you have a puncher or something, you're allowed to pit under a closed pit situation and change that.
Right.
But they did more than that. They changed all the tires, serviced him, and you cannot do that because it's a big advantage, obviously. You're going to serve that penalty.
They're going to lose a lot of track time. But then again, it's a 10-hour race.
Well, that moisture being thrown up in the air. It is a white wall. Look at that. That's what you see, that white wall. You can't wait to get to the braking areas. You see the 2 BMWs there. They're definitely with John Edwards and Bill Oberlin. And the driver lineup in every one of these factory teams is very impressive. And going at it, Cal.
They certainly are. Remember, the 25 is in the mix for the driver's title here today, but I think more than that, John Edwards just got aboard the 24, taken over from Lucas Luhr, so he's feeling his way around the racetrack. Bill Oberlin started this race, obviously.
Absolutely.
Well, that's something else the weather has done this weekend. 2 weeks ago at Circuit of the Americas, we saw 5 to 10 second gaps in lap time between the 4 various classes. A lot of that has gone into a cocked hat here. Those gaps have closed down a lot. The GTLM cars in particular run very strongly against the PC cars and so on.
Multi-class racing, though, Bob, relies on the organizers work very hard on the data to make sure you don't want too much of a spread, but you don't want it to be too close, because overtaking has to be a decisive thing between classes.
Right.
And in these conditions, it's not going to be decisive. It's really up to driver talent and the way your car is feeling in the rain at that moment. But you're not going to go whistling past. A prototype is not going to overtake this pack very easily at all.
Just to give you a rough gauge on the fastest laps of the race so far, in the prototype classes, Westbrook at a 128.8. Nick Tandy has the fastest lap, I believe, in GTLM at a 130.2. The fastest driver in the PC class is Tom Kimber-Smith at a 134.3. And then in the GTD class, you got guys in the 37 range. So that's kind of the spread there. And you can see that GTLM pace is really, really impressive.
I'd rather be in one of these GTLM cars than a prototype right now in the wet. Although visibility-wise, not having a wind chill sitting 3 feet away from you, it is easier in a prototype for visibility, believe it or not. But these guys, they've raced all year. It's like wrestlers. It's like any other sport. They all know each other's strengths and weaknesses, and they're not going to make a duff move. Although we're racing drivers, and
yeah,
duff moves are pretty, you know, the world's best mess it up every now and then. Actually, we've seen it all through the season. Quite surprising mistakes being made by some of the top drivers. But you're on the edge here. They're out there pushing, and they're getting paid to push. They're not getting paid to roll around and do a mediocre job. And there's big pressure in these teams. You manage some drivers, Calvin. What is the pressure on a driver at this stage of the season, last race of the year? How important is it to shine individually in the team?
Well, you've got to think about the big picture first. You've got to think about what does the team and the manufacturer need that are employing me. That's number one. Obviously, you want to finish the season on a high. You've got an off-season coming up. You want to be on a high going through that. And if you're out of a job, you want to impress. So there's a lot of different agendas that you have to tick.
And I'm 1-2 serving its penalty. Let me ask you guys this. 2 weeks ago at Circuit of the Americas, it was steaming hot. Temperatures in the 90s. Granted, it was a short race, but the speeds were so much greater. Energy going through the tires so much greater. So much more physical effort involved. Wet racetrack now. You're going slower. What does that do to driver durability? And is it easier in the wet?
Do you know what it really is? It's just the mental fatigue. You can come in, you could get back in physically, but literally,
you have a headache.
You have a headache. Your eyes are so wide they look like saucers, especially when you've been driving in the dark in the wet, when you're literally relying on the lights to illuminate that little narrow path of track in front of you.
Well, you never relax. In the dry, there are parts around the racetrack, and if you're out of traffic, you can just sort of like take a breath. In these conditions, you're on your toes. We've seen cars spin off at 40, 50, 60 miles an hour, where they're typically 80, 90 miles an hour faster in the drive. There's a spin there, someone coming off of 54 possibly. Saw a spin there coming off of turn 5 over to the left, driver's left side. A PC car possibly. Yeah,
oh, it's the 54.
Ooh,
John Bennett.
Oh no, you should have tried to spin it a little bit more aggressive.
Clear behind.
You're going to get
clear.
beached.
You're not clear
now.
Stay there. Stay there. Don't move. Don't move.
Ooh,
count to 3. 1 car, 2 car, 3 cars now.
But their championship
okay,
scenario.
Back up.
Minimum drive time is required. They've got to do 2 hours, 30 minutes. I think he may have high-sided the car there on the curve.
So.
Now there he goes.
Oh, no, wait a minute.
Watch it.
Oh, now a long line of cars.
A long line. Look all the way back through. This is going to get hairy.
Be gentle. Don't go too far back.
Oh, John. Phew. I was holding my breath there, guys.
Okay, you're clear. Clear. Just stay there. Stay there. You're clear.
Dodging a bullet right there.
Boy, oh boy.
Just the initial spin, you dodge a bullet, and then to get the car moving without getting someone else involved. So.
Okay, a non-event as it turns out, but it could have been a nasty one.
Yeah.
We talked about it. This team just needs to get it past that 2 hour, 30-minute mark, get that drive time in for the Pro-Am driver, John Bennett, then get Colin in to do 1 solitary lap. The championship is theirs. Then they can go race hard.
Oh, now he looks back and he sees all these headlights coming at him.
He'll be flustered, Bob. He'll be flustered right now.
I would think so. White headlights are the prototype cars. The yellow headlights are GT cars, but as we've pointed out, The speed differential being almost non-existent in some cases.
Look at that spray.
Oh.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, for John to come back and join in amongst all this, he doesn't know what's going on behind him. That is a very confusing situation. Everybody racing very hard. I mean, we've got, for position, everybody there we're watching on screen. And when you make a mistake like that with everything on, and we've seen it throughout the season, it takes a pro a certain amount of time to regroup, sometimes no time at all. But for the Pro-Am, it takes a little longer.
Sure.
And you can wind yourself down, especially in these conditions, into quite a negative driving situation. So John's a lot of experience and very quick. Let's see how quick he gets back on the right page.
And the key is we didn't see the incident, but if he got caught out and he doesn't understand why did that happen right there? He's now going to be thinking about that everywhere around the racetrack.
Yeah.
What I was doing before felt okay, and now it wasn't okay. How do I now handle the rest of the racetrack?
Well, there's pros, there's pro-ams, and then there's total ams like me. And to me, it's just terrifying looking at that spray. Suddenly you might see brake lights flash, and you better hope you've got tire grip. More on that. Here's Jamie. Oh, wait, hang on, Jamie. The number 4 is off and into the tire wall.
Ollie Gavin.
Where are we now?
Turn 1, I believe.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I believe it
Wide
is.
into one.
He won't brake much before he hit the slowed down. And the car, I don't believe, is that damaged, just nerfed in there, but he wouldn't have stopped much, would he?
It's been a lean couple of years for this car over here in the US. They won Le Mans this year, which is the big one, of course.
Going back again, Ellie. Try going back.
Tommy Milner, Ollie Gavin haven't
easier
had...
than slay backwards than it does.
Maybe try to use the downhill to back up a little bit.
Yeah, that's going to be the dominant force when you're in this sort of situation, is the incline of the land that he's on.
There you go. 5-time winner of this race is Ollie Gavin.
Led early, had the pole. He didn't grab the pole in qualifying, but because of the Porsche problems, ended up starting from the front of the GTLM pack and had a great race going with Lucas Luhr in the early going. Yeah. And but even the best in the business can get caught out.
Sharing with Tommy Milner, Ryan Briscoe is the 5th driver.
Keep going, you look good there.
He has no visibility right now going back. Remember, that fancy screen in the middle does not allow for reverse, I don't think, necessarily so much with the mud and the dirt, that you won't have much out the back. So he's got to choose his moment. His team are going to be guiding him.
Well, they can see the TV camera shot of him, but they also have a bank of monitors like you wouldn't believe. It's like our TV production trailer, what Corvette has in pit lane. And they will literally guide their drivers around the racetrack and spot for them from pit lane, because they're seeing every corner individually and able to give the driver a lot of information.
And of course, he's tumbling down the running order, out of the top 30 at this point. Let's see if we can see what happened. We'll pick up the spin in progress. He's already off, having gone over that curb.
Yeah, it looked like he just understeered wide.
It literally sucked him in. It dragged, once he went off, it just all the way until he got to the tire. Well, that would have felt like 20-minute journey out there for him. It was
You're just thinking, don't hit hard, and they're pretty strong race cars.
Everything's good, Ali. Everything's good.
Looks pretty good. Telemetry, I would assume, is the message right there in terms of everything's good.
Let's get back to Jamie with that tire story.
Well, you guys have talked about how close the GTLM cars are in terms of speed to the prototypes. A lot of that has to do with this new Michelin tire that's being used here this weekend. I want to show you the tread pattern. To the normal eye, it just looks like, okay, it's a tire with tread in it. But these sights right here, these little bitty lines, these have been added to the tires this year. What those do is, over the entire contact patches, they allow the tire to come up to temperature a lot faster. They also give the water one extra little channel to go. In addition to that, Michelin's also changed the center tread here to allow more water to spray out of the way of the cars. A lot of time, a lot of money has been spent on this. This is the only wet tire that Michelin supplies, so all of the GTLM cars using Michelin's are on this particular tire this weekend. Chris?
Well, Jamie, there's a short list of drivers that no matter whether it's wet or dry at Road Atlanta, they could probably drive this track blindfolded. Andy Lally, one of those guys. Andy, you know, we've got 9 more hours of racing in front of us. Usually an endurance race like this, we think about the physical challenges of it. But mentally, what is it like for a driver with these conditions?
The toughest part about Road Atlanta when it rains in spurts and then dries and spurts and dries, like especially going down, we've got so many valleys here that the water collects and drains down across the track. So you'll see a stream that one lap will be not too bad to negotiate, and the next lap, if we get a couple of bits of heavy rain, it'll be minutes later that stream builds up and becomes really thick, really deep. And it's funny, you'll see the classes, the different classes be strong at different points. Like our class, the GTD class, will be much better in really heavy rain because the tread depth is a little deeper on the Continentals, and we'll strive in that. Once it gets a little bit better, you'll see the GTLM cars really go with the weight and the different softer tire compounds there, but a little shallower tread block, they'll advance then. But this is tough for everybody. Prototypes, GT cars across the board, PC or Daytona prototypes, it doesn't matter. This is probably one of the toughest places to race in the rain, and this is probably the toughest conditions we've had at Petit Le Mans in almost 10 years.
Well, and his teammate behind the wheel this weekend, Robert Renard, it's his first weekend at Road Atlanta.
This has got a great battle right here. Spencer Papelli, the local boy, lives here in Atlanta these days, is leading right now in front of his family and home fans. And Cameron Lawrence is hanging in there. You see Cameron actually run a different line down the straightaway. If it does dry out, it's very easy to overheat those tread blocks. Jamie showed it on the Michelin tire. All of the tires in the field, the other three classes are on Continental tires, of course, and they all have that tread block, kind of the same design. And when it dries out, it squirms around, it overheats that. So what the drivers will do if it dries out too much is try and find some water. Typically, you don't want to be in heavy water, but down the straightaways, you'll try and cool the tire off. You're not running on the hot part of the racetrack. You try and cool it off through the deeper water.
You can also get a little bit better grip out there where race cars don't normally go because they haven't worn down the aggregate in the asphalt. It's a little more jagged, makes a little better mechanical contact with the tire tread, and might give you that little extra bit of grip.
Spencer is pushing there. You saw the car, just that little twitch as he went up the hill there. They're really on the edge. We've just seen some great drives from Spencer in the last couple of races, and as you say, the local guy knows his way around here, but I tell you what, Cameron Lawrence, he's very predatory in the way he's approaching him. He's sitting there, he's watching what's going on, he's watching Spencer's car. He's not going to do a crazy move, but he looks like he's ready to pounce if something goes awry with Spencer in front.
Well, Spencer has not pitted yet today, so I think they're off strategy a little bit, and that's really an indication how far you can go in these wet conditions and stretch your fuel mileage. Yes, we've had some yellow flags here today, but got an hour and 25 on the board, and he hasn't had to put any extra fuel in that Porsche right now.
Well, he is tail happy everywhere. There's a look down at the Corvette Racing pits. I think there's more TV screens there than we've got here bringing you this broadcast. But there you get an idea of just the gobs of information those engineers have.
All
there's
being
gobs
processed.
of lunch they have there.
Yeah, there's the lunch. But I tell you what, it's all because Gary Pratt loves Minecraft, and that's why they have so many monitors, basically. No, they are, I mean, you use the military analogy there, but Gary and Pratt and Miller are involved, aren't they, Bob, very heavily in some top secret
DOD projects.
DOD stuff. So
see Westbrook there going through turn one. He has now grabbed the lead of this race. Dane Cameron just climbing the hill, so Westy's about 3 seconds in front. Here's a replay of the move coming up into heavy traffic. Westy just threads the needle there. He's got the confidence here in these conditions, and
was there a
little
touch there?
touch? That might have been a little payback for what happened at Road America down in turn one.
yeah, drivers don't do that.
Dave Cameron would say, "I'm not okay with that."
Yeah, I mean, he wouldn't be trying to do anything. It's just in the wet conditions, you dive down the inside, you're going to use a bit more of the road, and there was no foul play there, but I think it just demonstrates the confidence that Richard has in the car this weekend, and it gains. You know, I mean, you don't want to get too far out your window in terms of getting overconfident, but the car's working well. He's an ace in the way. He's got a lot of laps in wet conditions, living over in England and racing in Europe for so many years.
Qualifying was outstanding, I've got to tell you. I was, you know, I think it's a chance for a driver. All these drivers are amazing, but I tell you what, you're right. There's a day when you feel better than everyone else in the wet, especially, and I reckon that was yesterday for Richard, and he's followed it up today so far with the pace. Great, of course, for the Whelan whole family here supporting. It's a very family affair for them to be, you know, to be involved with this team, and you know, just to see the car running so well, it must be really good feeling for them all.
Whatever happens this year, I mean, yes, they're on the verge of a championship. They're only 6 points back of the 90. They need the 90 off the podium. They have to win. But even so, 2 wins on this season, bringing a second car together for Action Express, making that crew gel together. Dane said to me on Thursday, said the car is great. The car's been good all year, but he said it's the team that's come together so well, and they're very excited. They want to try and win this championship this year, but he said next year we're going to go in with so much more confidence. The group is working well together. They're going to be a very dominant force next year.
They've had some big wins this year, and this Mustang sampling car as well, picking up the 12 hours of Sebring. They are on board one of the Mazda prototypes. Both cars out there with their Sky Active diesel we've become accustomed to seeing in this series, but this will be the last race in these prototype chassis for the diesel engine. They'll go to a more conventional gas-powered motor next year and roll them back out.
Yeah, and everybody is so excited. I'm not saying they want to put a lid on this series, on this season, and move on, but I think that's how they feel. They've represented the brand very well. The car's been mechanically very strong. It's just the pace of the competition. They've adapted to what the regulations say they need. It's no disrespect to the Sky Active diesel. What a great feat of engineering. But you know what? They've tested with that gas engine, and they are quick. So isn't that great? Young drivers in there, Tristan Nunez and those guys, they want to be at the front. And next year, I reckon we're going to see a whole different picture to this team.
It's an exciting team. I mean, they've got some great crew. You can see the visibility there.
Oh my gosh.
Basically zero. What they're having to fight through in terms of the track conditions, what you're doing with your pedals and try to keep the car on the road, and but the visibility for the driver is extreme. But they've got a really good group, great engineering squad there, great drivers, really tight-knit team. They've worked well together despite obviously the pressure of running that diesel motor that does not have right now the power of the other cars in the field, but they keep going. Do you know what I mean? There's a mantra there that we will not give up, the little team that can do it, and they've won a lot of championships over the years. They're going to come back strong, I feel.
They have a terrific program for bringing science and technology to students around the country, so hats off to them for that. Number 3, Corvette, is in the pit lane from 4th in class. Jamie's there.
And Antonio Garcia brings the car to a stop. This is not a standard pit stop. You're going to see the rear bodywork come off. Crew members do have a belt in hand. Another issue that Garcia was having that he was passed along to the team was the windshield wiper. It's losing contact about 50% of the way across, so he doesn't have very good visibility in there right now. You can see throwing bodywork over the wall right now. The team has got a lot of work ahead of him, guys.
Yeah, Magnussen gets in. See if we can see what's going on.
Something in the
differential, or
see Binksy going to work there on the windshield wiper issue as well at the same time.
Isn't the alternator at the back of that car as well? So I'm thinking water getting into the electrics again.
Wow. Action Express cars in reverse positions. Christian has got around Dane. And I think what you're seeing here in the early part of this race is some guys are taking a different approach. It's all about those last couple of hours, so don't take any chances. We saw Dane Cameron at Coda be very aggressive there. He got up on a curb and got into the 8 car. What's going on with the 3 car?
It was the only, guys, you guys did call it. It was a very quick fix for the team. High fives all around. Also, while I'm here, you can talk to Gary Pratt about that number 4 with Oliver Gavin. The contact he had, he said there was no damage. It was actually a really light hit.
Interesting the way that visor strip has just peeled away from the top of the Corvette. The 97 Turner Motorsports BMW has gone around.
Telly regaining the track. Oh, it's just so
turn 5
tight
again.
There, yeah. And of course, there's no spotters on that part of the track, although visibility is pretty good looking through the left, but it's blind as you go over the crest. Obviously, visibility better in a GT car than it is in a prototype as you go over those blind brows. But you don't have any spotters or any assistance from your team out that far out the back.
Michael Marcel driving, running 11th in class before the spin.
They're pretty pumped about this weekend, coming off another podium run at Coda. He and Marcus Paltala, obviously, he and Dane Cameron won that race at Lime Rock Park this year, and it's been a strong year. They've got Andy Prio on board this weekend, along with Billy Johnson, 2 real strong drivers to join that 4-driver lineup.
Tire pressure adjustment going on the Martini prototype challenge car for Starworks.
These guys have won the PC class here 2 of the last 3 years, so they got a good notebook to work from. Good setup sheet, but not in these sort of conditions. Different set of rules today.
Great looking livery on that car. The Martini name well known to race fans around the world, their exploits in World Endurance, Formula One with the Williams team. Don't know if they made a driver change. It didn't look like it.
Mike Kedland last time across the stripe. Oh, 17 is on
Whoops.
and off. Wolf Hensler behind the wheel.
Got a turf beard.
Yeah, he's got a lot of debris on that radiator grill intake, so.
He really does, and that's enough to cause a little bit of a problem. Let's hope the water around the track might help dislodge some of that. And
see if we can see what happened. Wolf Hensler coming down to turn 10.
Through too much speed in.
Yeah.
Never got it turned.
But obviously wants to keep the momentum going to rejoin the track there.
He's at a good pace though. He's in the 29s compared to 28s for Tandy. So 29s for Tandy. So he's pretty much matching Tandy's pace there in the GTLM class.
What we've seen with Falcon tires as a tire, obviously we're used to talking about it as the brand here on the car, but their tire technology really particularly fits in a certain window which we're not necessarily privy to. Whether it's in the temperature, we've seen them in the heat, suddenly they'll go to extreme heat and they'll be like rocket ships. And you'll go, wow, they've overtaken the factory cars. And in the wet, we've also seen moments when they're ideally suited. I don't think they have, the window is not as wide, the tolerance is not as wide, the threshold, but when they're in that window, they're blinking good.
Yeah, I mean, their real ace used to be their wet weather tire. I think Michelin have certainly done a lot of homework and have caught up maybe, but I think their first win was in ALMS in the wet at Mid-Ohio as a brilliant victory, and we've seen them always have good wet weather pace. And also in the cool conditions, they're always strong in the nighttime hours here at Petit. They've won the last 2 years here when it's cooled down, and they've gone to some compounds that suit the conditions. So Michelin have definitely kept their eye on them all season long.
54 is in. Championship leader in Prototype Challenge, Jamie.
And John Bennett will say behind the wheel he has about an hour left before he hits that 2.5-hour mark. It's going to be a fuel-only stop right now, though. The team's going to leave him out on those Continental tires. They haven't worn him down a lot. Plus, it's going to allow John to keep the heat in the tires and just stay comfortable just so he can get to the end of the stint. Quick stop, and he's going out.
I think that's a great point, Jamie, about the tire temperature. You're not allowed tire warmers, so you can't go out there on tires that have been pre-warmed. So you go out there on rock cold tires, it's going to be a harder first 2 or 3 laps. You go out there with a little bit of tire temp, which has obviously gone down once you hit pit lane, not at full racing speeds, but it's going to give you a little bit of confidence going back onto the racetrack.
So John Bennett, who owns the Core Autosport team, as well as a thriving carbon fiber composite business in
really
South Carolina.
There's the 10 car comes through the S's.
Trying to stay out of the way.
When you get to that point, Bob, it's like you want to turn the car more, but if you turn the steering wheel too much, JB, it will not respond. You're just going to plow straight ahead. So sometimes it's like, how did he run into him? Well, the car's not responding to the extra input that you want to give it.
No. That's why you said you caught it early. Look at the 73 Park Place car comes in. They had a lovely time. Great run at COTA. It was a fantastic race for them.
First pit stop of the day.
Yeah, but as you say, gosh, 1 hour 36 minutes into a race. We're almost looking at the second pit stop in prototypes by this time, but
these guys normally go in dry conditions about 50, 55 minutes, maybe an hour max, so that's a big stretch there. I spoke to Don Salama, who's the strategist on the Turner Motorsport Z4. He said, you know what, with a certain fuel map setting, we may see in excess of an hour 30 to around 45 green flag running. We've seen some yellow for this run, so they can certainly stretch it.
Well, as you say, they're going to get to the point that they need to with the drivers and strategy. Err on the side of caution just to make sure they're all set with the unknowns of the fuel economy in this. But as they head back out, I wonder, they switched drivers there, Cal. I don't know who they switched to. We'll see that as soon as it goes to the timing and scoring. All right, so leaves the pit lane. It's very difficult as a new driver in the car to rejoin this race or join this race and have to get up to speed.
Patrick Lindsay, I think, behind the wheel now.
Very
He's the
tough.
regular co-driver with Spencer Pumpelly. He had a slight off in the morning warm-up. No damage, but he'll be on his toes.
Yeah, you just got to, you feel your way around, don't you? A lot of, it was interesting. You could see the psychology of the week in play in the fact that if we have a shower in an otherwise forecasted lovely sunny weekend, a lot of cars don't take out to the track, do they? But this weekend in practice and in night practice, you're like, that you could tell the crew chiefs were like, guys, You've got to go out because you've got to know how to get out.
It's going to be raining on Saturday.
It's going to be raining on Saturday. That's interesting, Calvin. That was fantastic. Watching the BMW there of Bill Olin was right up with alongside the prototype there as they're heading through the corner. Equal speed all the way through there.
Oh, man, the Park Place car sideways there, coming off turn 7. Important corner onto this long back straightaway. As he continues on his way, let's go to Jamie Howe.
Well, anyone who is familiar with motorsports in America, you've heard the name Lynn St. James. And Lynn, I heard over the PA when I was out for pre-race, you gave an award to Dr. Panos as part of the celebration. Tell me about that award.
Well, actually, in 2007, I ran into Paul Newman, who I used to race against a lot back in the day, in the 80s and 90s. And he said, "What are you doing now?" And I said, "Well, I'd like to create a scholarship award for women in racing." And so he gave me some help in starting that. And in sort of an honor of that, I created a leadership award in his honor, and been doing this now since 2007. And I've known Don Panos since we bought Road Atlanta, and I saw the vision. I rode around with him, and he gave me all of this description of what he was going to do here, and he's made all those changes, and he's done so many things. He created the Women's Global GT Series, and he's just a true leader. He's a very passionate man about what he does, and he does everything with passion. And so today, this year, I felt it was the appropriate thing to do to honor him. And he was going to be here, and he created the Petit Le Mans, so this was the perfect place to do it. So I was very honored to be able to give that to him. The Women's Sports Foundation Leadership Award was, he was the recipient this year.
When you mention women in racing, one particular woman that we have racing for a championship today, that's Christina Nielsen. What are your thoughts on what she's on the brink of accomplishing?
Well, I mean, if she's able to pull it off, it is a very tight, really, really tight. I had no idea. I knew she was leading by 1 point, but it's very, there's a lot of depth there. And if she's able to do that, championships live forever. That goes in the record books and it's always there. So hopefully she can do it. But I talked to her a little bit yesterday, and I said, don't wear that on your shoulders as a burden. Just go out there. You've earned your right, to be able to earn that to get here. So just go out there and race like you always have. And she's out there setting a good pace in these conditions that are really tough. They're changing all the time. So you have to be in control of the car, control of your brain, and just go out there and do your thing. And hopefully, if it's destiny and it's meant to be, it'll happen. She's got a great team, and hopefully she can do it.
I bet that advice meant a lot to her. As they run right now, she would be 5 points back. So still a lot of racing left. Chris?
And Jamie also in GT Daytona, the battle up front between Park Place Porsche and the Viper. And this man, Mark Goosen's going to be getting in behind the wheel of that 93 Viper pretty soon. Your teammate Cameron Lawrence has been in for about 2 hours. Has he been able to give you any feedback on that car in these wet conditions?
Well, very surprisingly, that kid is very talented, and he stays so calm behind the wheel. And every time we ask him how he's doing, everything's cool and everything's easy. So, he's been rock solid. He's been having a very competitive pace, but also a very consistent pace. And he hasn't complained about anything, except from his tires are going away a little bit, but it doesn't show against the competition.
Well, the last 2 days we've been practicing in the rain, and one thing everybody in the garage paddock area has been saying is that Viper, the torque curve is so smooth and long, it's got to be a great car to drive. That's what the competition thinks. How about you?
Well, we're having a lot of problems inside that car. No, I'm kidding. The car is really good to drive, but, I think all week long it's all been about the rain conditions, depending on how much water there's on track, but the car's running pretty easy. But, it's very easy to make a mistake as well, and we've seen a lot of that today. So, main target is to stay on track and stay clean.
Yeah, we've got a lot of racing in front of us. Mark Goosen's looking for his first win here at Petit Le Mans.
Saw Cameron Lawrence with that line right alongside the spectator fence. And here at Road Atlanta, those spectators are very close to the racetrack on that long backstretch. There's also a lot of very tall trees back there, so even if the rain were to stop entirely, that spray would hang in the air for a long time before the track finally dried. But we're not anticipating that. Let's hop aboard now with Richard Westbrook on the lead at the Petit Le Mans. Watch a master at work and listen.
certainly had a good season here at Core Autosport in the PC Championship. Certainly been a front runner every week, been in contention to win races. You know, all in all, leading the championship. We just got to finish this season strong, do what we've been doing all year.
Good season so far, so we had a couple of podiums. The points are very close, so it's still everything possible. Still have the chance to go for it.
Consistency is the key to being on top of the points. We're just going to give it our all and, you know, continue what we've been doing so far.
We've been on the podium, we've won races, we finished second, we finished third. We've led this championship. And then going into Petit Le Mans, it's going to even open up to a four-way battle with the final race to go. It's the most competitive year I've ever been involved in ever.
We've had a really, really strong start to the year with a win at 24 Hours of Daytona and again at Sebring. We're not exactly where we want to be right now, but you know, anything can happen.
Bad start of the season with two problems in the long races in Daytona and Sebring, but we won 3 races in a row. For the moment, we just have the best position in the championship. It gives us more confidence in the future, for sure.
Big improvement for last year. Came back really strong, and we've been leading the championship for 4 or 5 races. It couldn't be any tighter. Going to go down to the last hour in Petit.
It's been an unbelievable season for us. We win at Detroit, and then we go on to win at Road America. With how strong we feel and how good we feel about it, I'd be looking for us to win this championship.
Well, the last hour at the Petit Le Mans, powered by Mazda, is about 8 hours away. Lots of racing still to come here on a very wet day at Road Atlanta. I'm Bob Varsha with Calvin Fish, Justin Bell, Jamie Howe, and Chris Neville down in the pit lane. Let's take a look at some highlights of the race thus far. Richard Westbrook started from pole and remains on the lead. And in that qualifying session, problems for some of the crowd favorite cars. Here's Brian Sellers in the number 17, 2-time defending race-winning Falcon Porsche.
Treacherous conditions in qualifying. We're on board here with Brian. He just touched, this is the deep water there. Hands off the wheel as he hits the tire wall. Big damage, a lot of work overnight to get that car on the grid.
And they weren't the only ones. Porsche RSR factory cars have just been dynamite all weekend, but the 912 car got off, bent the frame, couldn't be repaired. A substitute car was brought into play. They are quick. In the second hour of the race, Richard Westbrook powering through while the 912 behind him suffered an apparent left rear tire failure, went off, but was recovered.
That corner has certainly claimed some victims. This was a very, very slow progression to the wall for Oliver Gavin there. He got sucked in by that red clay and had no option but get all the way out to those tires.
Then there were problems for the other Corvette, the number 3 that's still in championship contention there underneath the rear of the car, fixing an electrical issue. Dan Binks, the crew chief, is working on the wiper. Looked like they kept him on the same lap, so great service, great job there by the Corvette team.
Meanwhile, the saga of the 17 continued. The car off and on in the hands of Wolf Hensler, who relieved Brian Sellers, who started the car. Keep an eye on the temperature gauges after all that turf got into the radiator covering. And as you could see, still sopping wet conditions. If anything, raining perhaps a bit harder here at Road Atlanta now than it was at the start of this race.
This is a guy who's been on a tear throughout the first couple hours of this race, Justin. Nick Tandy has got this car to the lead in GTLM, and he's running lap times that are phenomenal. He's 3rd overall, unbelievably, in amongst the prototype cars. Only cars ahead of him are Westview Lees and Christian Fittipaldi, the 2 championship contenders there. Nick Tandy is running in front of Dane Cameron, in front of Joey Hand, Ricky Taylor, and really running solid.
And a 10th quicker than Richard Westbrook at the front of the field right now. Now, it's not inconceivable you'll see a GTLM car actually certainly on the podium, but maybe for the overall win here. And that's just indicative of how fast GTLM is in these conditions. The gap between, the spread between these classes has been so well managed. In perfect conditions, they are well balanced and well separated. But in these kind of conditions, the literal dynamics and the superior technology in many ways of the electronics and the handling and traction control on these things, and ABS, they don't have ABS actually, do they?
Oh boy.
Oh, the 5 is in the gravel.
Christian was getting a little bit closer.
Full course yellow.
Seeing
the flag waves.
Oh, premature
Yeah, I think
flagellation there. I think that could have been avoided if it just got out of there a fraction earlier. That's it's such a dangerous corner though.
Oh, yeah,
and he was
you're
right
in the
there.
impact zone. And the problem in these conditions, if someone sees the car off, you'll go at the brake pedal a little bit harder and you'll spear off in the same direction. So you have to make that call.
Yeah, I believe that the full course yellow will be because the conditions have just absolutely deteriorated in the space of one lap. So that would be a very good call by race control.
So they'll slow the field down, let everybody get a good look at what the track is turning into.
I've been listening in on the team radios, guys. Richard Westbrook, leading the field right now, has been complaining over the last couple of laps about how treacherous the conditions are out there, telling the team it is zero visibility because of the spray and the rain that is increased right now. As soon as the team told him that the 5 car was off, Richard said, I knew it. It's 1 lap too late. I told you guys, it is horrible out here right now. So the whole field dealing with it.
Wow, just look at those conditions. Now, with the 5 going off, Nick Tandy moved up to 2nd in the overall with the GTLM class leader. He is sharing that Porsche with the leader in the Drivers' Championship, Patrick Pilet. Patrick's nearest rivals, Bill Auberlin and Dirk Werner in the BMW. They run 2nd in GTLM. It's that close.
And it's winner take all. Whichever car finishes in front will clinch the Drivers' Championship, and whichever manufacturer, if it's not one of those 2 cars, another Porsche or the other BMW, could win it for the manufacturer title. So they're pushing hard, but it's early in the going. But Richard Westbrook had been on the radio saying these conditions are deteriorating. I cannot see. You could hear it from the onboard, even with traction control now with the prototype cars. He was still getting wheel spin in certain areas of the racetrack. And everyone would say, well, you're leading the race. Yeah, sure, you want it to go yellow so you can just cruise around, but there's a championship on the line. But he's also giving you the direct feedback. Earlier in the race, it was okay. Then it gets to that critical point.
There's our GT Daytona class leader. Sensation in that class thus far, young Cameron Lawrence.
What a job he's done, putting the car on the pole, dealing with these conditions, hasn't put a foot wrong. Spencer Pumpelli led briefly. That was due to not pitting, of course, but Cameron's really done a great job here today. They're on the verge of that TP NAEC title
in the GT Daytona class. And that white open cockpit car, that's our prototype challenge class leader, Johnny Molam, who started 2nd and now leads that class over the man who did start on pole, Tom Kimber-Smith, who runs right behind him. Once again, it's that close here at Road Atlanta.
Fox Sports Go, Brian Hill with you, along with Calvin Fish and Tommy Kendall. And the rain coming down a little bit harder under full course caution. Christian Fittipaldi really brought it out with his spin down in turn 5, but they're going to take this opportunity. And Calvin, I think we've seen this throughout the day. Whenever we go full course caution, they take the opportunity to try to come out and blow as much water off the racetrack as they can with those jet dryers.
Yeah, they're very effective, and we heard that Richard Westbrook was complaining that the conditions were too bad to stay under green conditions. So this will give the opportunity for the crews to get out there, do a little bit of work. Also, everyone's hitting pit lane, seeing some driver changes now. Westy's out, Michael Valiente, his regular teammate, now behind the wheel of the 90. Looks like Bourdais is now behind the wheel of the number 5, so Christian had that quick spin and didn't lose a lap or anything, so he got a bit lucky by getting back out of the gravel. No damage to the race car, of course.
Now watch the cars come by the jet dryer. 31 was complaining a little bit earlier. Dane Cameron saying, hey, when we go by the jet dryer, you can see the exhaust out the side. He said it almost blew the door open. So I guess it's good and bad. It depends on which side of it you're on.
You can almost see the open cockpit cars with the PC drivers kind of flinching as they go by when that spray is hitting them.
See the number 70 Mazda there, and Tommy and I were talking a little bit earlier. I was thinking that we might actually see some better performance out of the Mazdas here with the limited grip, and the diesel engine certainly should be able to go a long, long way on fuel.
Get great fuel mileage, great torque off the corners, which is great in traffic conditions, and it's a nice the way the power delivery is with that diesel as well.
Pit lane. See the 48 coming in. Remember, one of the championship contenders in GTD, defending winners. Looks like we'll have a driver change on the pit stop. You see him unplug his drink tube and the radio from the helmet, and now GT pit stops going on.
Surprised that they'd be pulling Dion out right now. Remember that 2-hour, 30-minute minimum drive time rule for the silver driver. I would have thought they would want to tick that box right now, but the end of the day, they probably think, well, if we're going to be in contention, he's going to have the opportunity to get back in and be running at the finish anyway, Tommy.
We also saw a change. It looked like Nick Tandy got out of the 911 after that incredible opening stint.
We talked about it with JB in terms of we kind of get blasé about the talent level in the field, but now and again you see someone special, Tommy.
Yeah, and, you know, obviously when he was in the Falcon car 2 years ago, he put in that just incredibly tenacious stint to close that one out. They had the year-old car then racing against the current cars and won the championship for Porsche. So, you know, he's been a key player. And, you know, people talk about how hungry drivers are. When I watch Nick Tandy, he literally looks like he's driving because he doesn't have his next meal. I mean, he's just, he just goes so hard. I was talking to Mark Goosens about him a little bit, asking if there's some guys that come by and are too aggressive. He goes, Tandy is incredibly aggressive, but he's not. Some guys are aggressive because they're mad you cut them off once before, and they're sending messages. He says, Tandy's just aggressive because he's just aggressive. He says, and I don't mind that. You know he's coming. He's fair, but, you know, and then I also went and talked to Bill Arberlin about him, and they have their history together. Right. And he says, I was the first guy to walk up to him after I saw him after Le Mans and said, hell of a job. So there's a lot of respect there. He says, I just wish he would just back it off a tick sometimes.
Yes, he's certainly on it, like thumb under the chin all of the time, that's for sure.
Patrick Pilet out in front in the 911. You guys were talking about that a little bit earlier. Expect to see, certainly with pit stops, the swing back and forth and something you don't normally see, and that would be GT cars at the front of the grid. And we were talking about it when we were in the trailer sitting on the couch watching you guys trying to stay dry, that, you know, people have to keep in mind the Continental tire, a spec tire that has to work on all those different prototypes, a spec tire that has to work on the GTD cars and on the prototype challenge cars, obviously a different tire for each one of those classes. But when you go to GT Le Mans, the GTLM category, Michelin can make a tire with a little more performance in it. They can focus a little bit harder, and that's why I think you get that performance out of that product.
And they can develop the tire through the year.
Absolutely.
And they can bring a different tire to different racetracks, so it's certainly going to give you a keen edge. And there's obviously been a fierce battle between the Falcon tire, Porsche, and the rest of the Michelin-shod field this year.
You know what I like about GTLM is when you look at it, Corvette's won races, Porsche's won races, BMW's won races, Ferrari's been close. Both Falcon and Michelin have won races. So we talk about the competitive nature of the series this year. I mean, it's really been competitive through all four classes, but it's just been intense.
Well, the irony is the biggest spread in the championships is in PC, which is the spec class.
Right.
The ones where you got to develop balance of performance, they're all really tight. So it's quite an amazing job the series have done this year.
Well, and something with a 10-hour race, usually the approach is for the championship guys, or just to try to win it, is to kind of keep yourself in contention and then really be strong, be lined up for the end. Talking to Arberlin yesterday, he says, you know, the threat of these really heavy rains, the threat of long yellows, the threat of red flags and potentially the race being stopped. He says it's like musical chairs. And so you literally you always have to be in position. And you're going to see a lot of, I don't think, you know, guys matching each other's strategies just because they can't afford to get off strategy to the person they're going against. And another thing, like, you know, in the PC class with that big lead, it's a frustrating way. In a way, obviously, everybody wants to have a big lead going into the last race and be able to clinch it by just getting their drivers in. But it's almost a maddening way to go racing because you get so conservative and you start doing different things. And you know, to put John in for that opening 2.5 hours, they're doing that focused on the super conservative strategy. But it's almost simpler when you got to go for it. You have to win because it makes it a whole lot. It's kind of your nature to charge, not manage the strategy.
You talk about nature. I love the nature of these endurance events. Sebring, Daytona, Petit Le Mans. It brings a lot of drivers in, especially with the Tequila Patron North American Endurance Championship. And what we get to see is good friends of ours like Johnny Mollem back in the series. He's with Andrew right now.
He certainly is, and we haven't seen him since he put it on the pole at the Rolex 24 in the PC car. But you just led a long time there, Johnny, but you said the conditions are unbelievably bad.
I think it's actually the only time I've driven worse conditions than this was actually in the European Le Mans series at Silverstone in 13, and they readied the race. I'm not saying they should red this race, but they should certainly go pace car for a while, which I think they're going to do. Because the trouble with the PC cars is you got the plank and we start surfing everywhere and down into 4 and 5 down there. Absolutely crazy. But I had a good fight with Tom Kimber-Smith. He led at the beginning. I got him on one of the restarts, and then it was just yo-yoing with traffic. It's very difficult to get past, and we've got so little traction coming out of over the top down into 12. The GT cars just muller us there, but it was a good race. I'm pleased with bar one and everyone that we led, and so we'll see. It's a long race. This is just about surviving, I think, more than anything.
And what brought you back into the series?
Sorry?
What brought you back into the series?
Oh, yeah, so basically we got Autosport Design and Tom Papadopoulos sort of helped us out to come back in. He's not here, unfortunately, but yeah, we're back, and then hopefully we'll be back at Daytona with get the whole crew back together again, and maybe next time we'll win Daytona.
Well done. Now to Matt.
And Andrew, climbing from the cockpit of the 911 is Nick Tandy. So first, how treacherous is it, and what section of the track gives you the most hindrance out there?
I mean, honestly, for most of the time that we were running, it was okay. It's only when you get the standing water, like now, when the the rain has started falling heavily, but you see it immediately when the cars go off. And this is the point where, when you're in the car and driving, you have to look for when the rain's coming and then adjust your speed accordingly. But it's it's not always that easy.
How difficult is that balance of aggression, yet knowing that there's a chance of hydroplating at every corner because of the water picking up on the racetrack?
It makes it much easier when you have a fast car, because then you can kind of pick and choose. And clearly with the tyres we've got with Michelin and how they're working on with Porsche, and we do a lot of development with Michelin and getting our tyres good. So it's no surprise that we're quick in the rain. But it's interesting, but it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun fighting with their prototypes as well.
Both 911 and the 912 have had radio issues intermittently throughout much of the day. They've even taken a generator from down here in the pit to the backside trying to help with the repeater. Has your radio communications been fixed?
We had a small issue when Patrick went out in our car, but I think it's fixed now. We do have problems here normally at Road Atlanta because we're down in the valley and the other side of the track is over the hill, so it's always a little bit of an issue. But you only need the radio when things are going badly, so hopefully we won't have to rely on it too much.
All right, thank you. Brian?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the layout of this racetrack, Road America is another one of those that's so long, so big, sometimes hard to get the radio communication. We've seen now with pit stops, like we were talking about a little bit earlier, and once we've cycled through, we've gotten the prototypes back to the front and then the GTLM cars. But it's interesting, they were talking about the rain. These yellows are both blessings and curse. When the cars are out there running at speed, it dissipates the water, it pushes it off to the sides. And when the yellows come, and especially if the rain is intensified a little bit more, the cars just cruising around behind the safety car don't dissipate the water nearly as much. So it's one of those things where it gives everybody a chance to rest, but I think it really allows the water to kind of come back onto the racetrack.
It certainly does, and right now we're hearing that Bo Barfield, the race director, is out there with Johnny Unser, who assists him under these race conditions to try and take a look at the racetrack, see where the puddling is, Tommy. And I think everyone's on it right now. The conditions right now are just too extreme. And if we go back to green flag racing, we're probably going to have some issues with aquaplaning. As Johnny Molam said, he talked about the plank as basically the underfloor, between the chassis and the road, effectively, like a major skid plate there. And it gets up on that, and suddenly the tires aren't really touching. You're up on top of the water when it gets too deep.
Yeah, I mean, the tires, you get momentary interruptions with the aquaplaning, but if the plank's there, you can kind of have a sustained, skate, free skate, if you will. And I think, the fact we've had so much rain, this track does tend to drain pretty well. But, with the water table being as high as it is, with you just getting pounded with this steady rain, it has nowhere to go. So as we say that, we're getting some word right now that we are going back to green this lap.
The 22 from Alex Job Racing is in. It looks like Andrew Davis, who's climbing in behind the wheel. He'll scoot forward, and you notice that he can adjust the steering wheel and all, but this is one of the problems too. When you slow down, the visibility becomes very, very difficult. You're just not getting the airflow through the car that you need to get those windshields defrosted. We talked about what a great job the 93 was doing. Cameron Lawrence behind the wheel. He's with Andrew.
How was that? Amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy out there right now, but the first 2 hours were actually pretty uneventful on the track. The weather wasn't bad. The track started to clean up with all the cars cycling through. So our TI Emotive Viper Exchange Viper was just on rails, very comfortable in that weather. And, I just tried to put my head down and get as much gap as we can and put us in a good spot for the 4-hour mark.
You really put your name on your map. You really put your name on the map, I should say, this weekend.
Yeah, it's just been a really good weekend. I can't say enough about the crew and the guys and the support we've had from TI and Viper Exchange. The car has just been great, and 4 races in the car, but it already feels like home. A very balanced car, and the guys are never, pushing me to do anything I'm not comfortable with, and they've just let me get my time. And I think it shows. You know, we just have a really good team with good strategy and good equipment, so we're going to take it to them.
Well, it's going green. Thanks very much. We'll be watching you for the rest of the race. Back to the booth.
It's time for discovery now. We're going back to green. Dane Cameron leads the field to green in the 31. And now you got to go back and figure out where all those puddles are, where the rivulets of water are across the racetrack.
For the guy in second place, Michael Valiente, he's experiencing it for the first time. So a lot of pressure to be on. We're hearing the 17 is off. What a weekend for that team. Did he get away with it? I don't see
They're in turn 12.
damage.
This is the problem.
Oh, this is tough. This is so tough to know.
Good job, Wolf.
I was saying, good job, Wolf. You missed everyone.
You can open your eyes now. Oh, man. And you got to give credit to the flaggers on that and the crews with radios on the pit wall who are saying there's a car off in turn 12. You know that everything lights up. And that was in turn 12 onto the front straightaway.
He didn't waste any time getting back up to speed. Probably going to get some curb here on the outside.
Yeah, he's just too wide. Oh, yeah, he's just a little bit too wide there. He tried to correct it, and then he gets out on the paint and on the grass. And fortunately, you're at restart speed, so he wasn't up to the full speed to be carrying there.
It scares me when I look at it in replay. It still scares me. Here's from onboard. Look at his eyes.
Wolfie's eyes are normally big. They got even bigger right there.
I'm telling you, what a great job. And you always tell drivers in driver school, look where you want the car to go. Look where you want it to go. And you can see, even when it got sideways, he's looking down the track where he wants it to go, steering in that direction. He did make a little quick glance back up the track to see who was going to hit him. But
the best way I've ever heard that described, others.
Someone else. That's a 90. It's Valiente.
It's your second place car. And
boy.
it looks like the front splitter buried in the red Georgia clay.
Go back with Mike when you can. You're on the asphalt with the rear wheels. Try to go back with when you can.
Say try to get those rear tires back on the asphalt and see if we can get back. But here's the same problem that Hensler had. Cars streaming at speed through the apex of 12.
This is scary.
2 hours, 17 minutes in. You've got time. Don't panic. Don't make a mistake. Stop.
Not too far. Not too far. Michael, now go right. Go right.
Got to get moving.
Go forward, try to go right.
Get moving.
And people go behind you.
Every car that comes by is another risk. Wants to keep it on the asphalt.
Back up a little bit more. If you have to, back up a little more.
Struggling to find reverse gear, I think, Tommy. Running in the second spot. You can see that from the leader light system. When he came across the stripe, Dane Cameron continues to lead, but the key is just trying to get out of here safely and then maybe secondary stay on the lead lap.
He's going to go forward and see if he can get it moving that way. Pits are closed. Full course caution is out. Trying to get it lit up. He's got to be careful to come back across the racetrack in front of Troy.
Oh, goodness.
Go, Michael, go. We're going to stand this lap.
That is dodging a big, big bullet.
And almost, or look at the sod that's coming off. And Tommy, you and I talked about this a little bit earlier as well. All that mud, it gets in the radiators. Could be a problem. This will be a short full course caution. On board with Michael.
He's got the clutch down. You don't hear any power there. And now he's just trying to figure out where am I, what do I do?
That is an awful feeling. You know you're sitting right where on the racing line.
Regather his thoughts a little bit, talk on the radio.
Trying to regroup, what's going on, why can't I get traction? And again, he just got in the car, so Westbrook started, was feeling the racetrack out. We went back to green, couple of laps in. Still running in the second spot behind Dane Cameron and just got caught out by the conditions, it seems like, down in turn 12.
Well, and there's so much pressure, like you said. Cameron settled in, is used to all the conditions. He's in, he's feeling a lot of pressure. Probably rushed himself a little bit. That was his first time at speed through 12.
Got to be careful, too, that you don't damage the clutch in this type of scenario where you're trying to get it moving, because that will hurt you later in this race today.
We see all the grass in the radiator, the mud, and like I said, Tommy, you and I were talking about that. Even the mud that's around the racetrack from where people have gotten off, if it gets in the radiators and eventually begins to heat up enough, it's going to gum up, and we could see overheating problems a little later in the going. No fault of your own, but just from the debris that's been left on the racing surface. That's going to have to get cleaned off, I would think.
Well, I'm not sure they'll pit him right now because they don't want to lose a lap, so I think he'll probably stay out on the racetrack. Catch up to the pack. It's a short yellow, so pits will stay closed, so even coming down pit lane, it's going to cost him time. Safety vehicle out there in the middle of the road, just clean up continues.
Well, there you see, you know, it's obviously raining harder than it was before.
I think part of the problem, too, is that even though it's not raining hard here, it's not a thunderstorm like we think about, it's raining moderately, but the problem is the mist that hangs in the air. With the air being as saturated as it is, when all that spray goes up, it doesn't evaporate. There's no wind, really, to blow it out of the way, so it just hangs above the racing surface, and that's one of the problems, especially down the front straightaway, which is lower. There's nowhere for it to go. It just kind of hangs in the valley.
The car looks okay.
It does.
I mean, we talked about the potential incident with other traffic, but I mean, I don't see any damage on that race car, Tommy.
And if you were to say to someone, hey, you're going to come down this alley and you're going to do a bunch of spins with the big walls on each side, and we saw it with the 17, something about the all in the rain, all the weights going in one direction, it keeps going in that direction, whether it's spinning or not.
And if you have a problem earlier in that corner, we've seen cars crash this weekend, it's all over because you're just on the trajectory to the wall. But if you're exiting the corner when you lose control or lose traction, you can sometimes, we saw Wolfie, we saw
You may be
Michael.
fortunate enough to have enough momentum down the racetrack that's where you go. You know, we talk about problems throughout the weekend. The weather has certainly caused many of them, but the team's fighting back from them. Nobody's fought back any harder than the guys down at Mike Shank Racing, Andrew.
And I'm with Oz Negri. Well, you didn't even expect to be racing, did you? So this is a bonus, if you could call it a bonus racing in weather like this.
Yeah, it's definitely not fun. It was extremely dangerous on the last 4 or 5 laps on green flag. I was telling Mike, I said, this is crazy. It's not racing. I was aquaplaning everywhere. I don't know, I just need them to take a closer look to the conditions because that was not good.
So you think it really should be a red flag?
It was not good. We should be either behind a pace car or on the red flag. When we had the wave by, I had no idea where I was. I had no idea that I had pace past the pace car. I could not see anything in front of me because of the spray. It's just not good.
Just talk a bit about the fantastic job the Mike Shank boys have done here, and of course Elan Technologies repairing this car.
I can't say enough about my guys. You know, they worked their butts off for the past 2 days, and you know, had an off at the warm-up again, so they had to trash and work again. You know, just put the car in the grid, and you know, just an amazing bunch of guys. I just can't say enough about them. I love them to death.
Oz, thanks very much. Well, let's see what happens. Maybe they will red flag it.
See all the work that they had to do to get the 60 back together, and you know, long gone are the days of tube frame cars as we move, you know, further into the championship, a little further down the line, and already teams running the P2 base car, carbon fiber. Those don't bend, they break, and when they break, they're not easy to repair.
Well, they punched a hole from the pickup point through the left front corner, and they had to take it to Elan Technologies. Those guys did dynamite work overnight. Got the car back to the track about 9:30 yesterday morning. They worked all day. Missed qualifying right for the morning warm-up. Oz had another off down in turn 4, aquaplaned. They had to go to work again, just minor damage, Tommy, but this is a team that has no quit. Mike Shank, it starts at the top. I mean, he is a racer, he is a fighter, he gives it 1,000,000%, he lives and breathes racing, and that comes all the way down through his whole crew.
And this car is obviously the Justin Wilson tribute car, so fighting for something bigger than themselves, if you will, or at least Justin was a part of the winning team at Daytona a couple years with Mike Shank Racing. There's Bo Barfield on the right.
You see Bo Barfield there with the jacket on, talking to the IMSA guys, and what they're going to try to do, I believe, and what we're being told, is help with the drainage a little bit. You can see the water running down the edge of the racetrack, and they're trying to figure out a way to get it to run through the grass, which means they're going to look at trying to make some type of a ditch, see if they can get it run in a different area.
Kudos to them for trying. I don't know how low it is to the right there. It might just cross later on.
Look at the water there underneath the safety vehicle. You can see how it's running down the racetrack.
And these decisions are being made by guys who have raced before. Bo was a very accomplished racer. Obviously, Johnny Onser is assisting him. You got EFR, Elliot Forbes-Robinson up there in the tower as well. These guys, I mean, these aren't decisions that are made lightly. I know Oz is frustrated by going back to green. We heard Westbrook on the radio saying we shouldn't be running these conditions. Tandy, of all people, says it's a little bit hairy out there. So, but these guys have been there before. They obviously went out, made the determination. I think we're good to go again. And those blowers make a big difference, I mean, in terms of clearing the racetrack. But you can see already, Tommy, down through the S's there, like a couple of corners back from where we sit right now with the camera, right in that area, you can see how the water is laying. And there is zero control. You hit that, you were just along for the ride.
And a lot of people wonder why there would be more spray than there used to be in the olden days. But the vents now, based upon the aerodynamic rules, when you look on all four corners of the prototype, you can see on up there, they have these vents, and those are to keep the cars from blowing over. If they get sideways, the air is supposed to escape. But in the rain, when you run the rain tire, it's just like running an open wheel car. That spray now comes right out the top, and that's why we end up with so much spray and mist in the air, because now that air, that water, is allowed to escape. You see it on the Daytona prototype-based machines as well as the P2-based machines. So you get that spray up in the air, and it's going to hang.
It certainly will. It makes it really, really difficult, particularly when you got 3 or 4 cars wide going down the back straightaway, just seeing anything, seeing your reference points, seeing your brake markers. We saw guys just literally drive straight off the racetrack. Ben Keating down in turn 10 after he had his windshield steamed up. He couldn't see where he was going literally, but this is a big moment here. We see the 90 car continuing to circulate, so I assume that everything in terms of pressures, temperatures are okay with that car. He hasn't hit pit lane.
And Calvin, remember, the championship picture coming in was very simple, finishing third or better, and then the old Spirit of Daytona, VisitFlorida.com team takes the championship. They not only survived practice and qualifying to put the car on the pole, but now, as you mentioned, the car going around slowly on the racetrack now, they're not going to hit pit road. The telemetry coming from the race car shows them that, yes, there is some dirt on the grill openings, but the temperatures look good, so he is not going to hit pit road. They know the water will wash some of that off, so they might have dodged a huge bullet here early on.
And it's relatively cool conditions as well, Matt, so that will aid in that scenario. But, you know, we hate talking about as it sits right now, but if the positions were frozen right now at the end of this race, Dane Cameron and Eric Curran would be your champions. They lead right now, and Valiente down in the 6th spot.
I'm wondering did Michael have some kind of dispute with John Pugh in front? It looked like he was trying to get alongside of him there in 6 and 7, or is he just trying to accelerate and brake and see if he can get some of that debris to fall off the front splitter?
If you go off in dry conditions, you get stacked up with grass. If you hit the brake pedal hard, it'll fall up. I think it's almost like mud that's firmly entrenched on there right now.
Speaking of trenches.
Now, my question is if you look at this shot, is this ground lower than this ground? If it is, then this trenching could conceivably work, but you know, this is an area where they're having a lot of trouble. So this trench that they're trying to build reminds me of a little bit, I hope I'm wrong, but trying to sweep water from one side of a bathtub to another. It's going to eventually get there.
And if you look to the right of the shot, you could see debris from the cars that have had problems earlier. The 33 right from the get-go had problems. 17 also with problems throughout not only the last couple of days, but during the race as well, Andrew.
Yeah, and that team run, of course, by Derek Walker, an old mate of mine from the 70s when we were both in Formula One together. Derek, this team has hopefully got a future. We know Falcon's going away. What will happen next year, do you hope?
Well, obviously, Falcon going away is the end of a great relationship we've had with Falcon. We've got to find a replacement. Right now, we don't have that, but we're trying real hard to make it happen.
Your boys have done an amazing job this weekend to get this car back racing. And just tell us about last night.
Well, they did indeed. I mean, to all intents and purposes, the car was written off. But it's our last race. There's no way they didn't want to be here and be racing. And as you can see, they've done a pretty good job. We're up there running well. They worked all night, put it all back together again, and here we are.
Derek, until a few months ago, you were the boss of IndyCar, so I suppose you've been in a situation about stopping races when it's really wet like this. So what's your take on it at the moment?
Yeah, it's a difficult one because you want everybody to race and you can't always predict the conditions, but I think there has to be a point where you have to think about the safety aspect of it, and I think what they're doing now, we're trying to do some corrections in the track to take some of that standing water away. I think it's absolutely the right thing because you know, it's almost rolling the dice when you're running in these conditions. It's not racing, really. It's roulette almost.
Well, Derek, we hope to see you back next year with the team. You had great teams in IndyCar, of course, and this fantastic team, which, let us not forget, won this race for the last 2 years. So
right.
let's see you back.
Trying to do it again. Thanks.
Looking for the hat trick as you see the 17 roll by, and you were just looking at the lap times that they've run for a car that had to have the frame straightened at a body shop just down the road. Running pretty quick.
Yeah, he's within half a second of the quickest lap in the class so far, which is one of the other factory Porsches. So now the car's running well. It's got good pace. It seems like they've made some adjustments with the tires and stuff and the pressures to get it in the sweet spot. But as we can see, it's still easy to make a mistake. I mean, it's, the risk is there all of the time. We saw Wolf Hensler. He's dynamite in the wet, but he made a little mistake on the front straightaway a few laps ago.
Mark Goossens is the leader in GTD on pit road. No tires going on, fuel only. Came in during a closed pit, so was it just a short stick of fuel? That's what it has to be, because it can only be emergency service. But what is the crew member doing now? He doesn't have the fuel hose in his hand.
They're addressing something on the right side.
Something.
Tell if the door's open or not on that side.
Remember, Cameron Lawrence qualified this Viper on pole, and Cameron Lawrence may not be a well-known name to endurance racers, but if you're a follower of the sprint race format and a follower of the Trans Am series, he's a 2-time champion in TA2, and he's about to be a 3-time champion. He's about to win 3 in a row. The kid is very, very fast, and Tommy, you know him well. You just said he's just a good all-around kid.
Well, he was my teammate last year in the TA2 stuff. He just won his 20th race there in 3 years, and he actually coincidentally drives for Mike Miller, which is Jim Miller of Pratt & Miller's brother. And
what's going on?
This is the car that was leading the Tequila Patron North American Endurance Championship, and that's their primary focus. What they were trying to do with Cameron starting is they were going to try, if they lead at any one of the stages, they clinch that title. So their focus was on trying to lead at the 4-hour mark.
Seems like they
try the shift. It is okay. I can go to do. Okay, go.
Something with the paddle shift? Is it an electric?
They certainly replaced the part. I saw a part come out of the passenger side of the car and over the wall, so they replaced something, so possibly something electronic or gearbox related.
Looks like it might have been a battery change. Of course, the paddle shift is very confusing to both Calvin and myself, because back in the day, we reached over and took a lever.
Right. You want me to put that off?
I thought paddle shift is when you were rowing your canoe, when you move from one side to the other.
Tommy's driven paddle shift cars.
I have, and you know, obviously, if it's something mechanical, they'd have to be down underneath.
Shifting okay.
He's saying everything okay. My question is, did they stick some fuel in it?
I didn't notice. They did. Oh,
yeah.
Well.
Andrew, what's going on down there?
Oh, yeah, you read it absolutely right. It was a problem with the paddle shift. They have replaced a part. They think it's going to be okay now. We'll just monitor that situation. But, yeah, you got it absolutely spot on.
Question is, did they need to take some fuel for emergency service if the pit lane
was
closed?
You can't fix the car with emergency service. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So they're going to get the penalty anyway, so why not top him up?
Yeah.
If you're doing just emergency service, like you're out of fuel or you got a cut down tire, that's a freebie. But with that, you might as well.
Well, could they argue
give it a
that
wax job if you wanted to?
Could you argue that the battery change was emergency service because the car wouldn't continue if they didn't replace it?
I don't think so.
Well, no, you could argue it.
Oh, you could argue until you're blue in the face, but I don't think Bo Barfield is going to give you any time. He'll let you talk forever. He'll just, no.
See the water rolling down the hill.
Can you win the argument? It's like arguing with your wife. You can do it.
Yeah, good point.
His wife or your wife?
certainly had a good season here at Core Sport in the PC Championship. Certainly been a front runner every week, been in contention to win races. You know, all in all, leading the championship. We just got all in all, leading the championship. We've certainly had a good season here at Core Sport in the PC Championship. Certainly been a front runner every week, been in contention to win races. You know, all in all, leading the championship. We just got to finish this season strong, do what we've been doing all year.
Good season so far, so we had a couple of podiums. The points are very close, so it's still everything possible. Still have the chance to go for it.
Consistency is the key to being on top of the points. We're just going to give it our all and, you know, continue what we've been doing so far.
We've been on the podium, we've won races, we finished second, we finished third. We've led this championship. And then going into Petit Le Mans, it's going to even open up to a four-way battle with the final race to go. It's the most competitive year I've ever been involved in ever.
We've had a really, really strong start to the year with a win at 24 Hours of Daytona and again at Sebring. We're not exactly where we want to be right now, but you know, anything can happen.
Bad start of the season with two problems in the long races in Daytona and Sebring, but we won 3 races in a row. For the moment, we just have the best position in the championship. It gives us more confidence in the future, for sure.
Big improvement for last year. Came back really strong, and we've been leading the championship for 4 or 5 races. It couldn't be any tighter. Going to go down to the last hour in Petit.
It's been an unbelievable season for us. We win at Detroit, and then we go on to win at Road America. With how strong we feel and how good we feel about it, I'd be looking for us to win this championship.
Under full course caution, and just as we've done throughout the last 2 hours and 27 minutes, it's one of those things where when we go full course caution, the crews will come out and try to clean off the racetrack as best they can with the jet blowers and anything else that they can use to move the standing water out of the way.
Yeah, there's some rivers and there's also some standing water. There's a puddle that forms right around the apex of turn 1. Same thing in the downhill 12, which we saw catch 2 people out on that last restart.
And we talked about it. You know, the problem is now you get the cars slowed down and they don't clean as much. The cars themselves don't move as much water off the racetrack. Then you go back to green, and we saw it just a moment ago. Wolf Hensler and also the 90 car with Michael Valiente having problems there. You know, for Valiente, he had just gotten in the car. He didn't know what he's even up against. And then, you know, we go back to a restart and he comes through turn 12 and it bites him. So several guys have dodged bullets already. Valiente, talk about dodging a bullet, sat there for a long time trying to get the car refired, get it backed up and onto the racing surface, but has held on to the back of the lead lap. So he didn't lose a lap there. That's going to be critical.
Yeah.
And, you know, the big thing is, and I think Calvin spoke about it a little bit earlier, just saying, you know, you don't know how long this is going to go. You see Mike Rockenfeller behind the wheel now of the 90. You don't know how long this race is going to go. If they were to end it 5 or 6 hours in, you can't just sit and go, it's a 10-hour race. You got to fight now to be up at the front at all times because you don't know when the next weather system might come in. And after 5 hours, the race could be over with.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It's a little bit like musical chairs. You know, you can't back time from the end like you usually would, strategize around that. You've got to always kind of be matching what your guy's doing and with a constantly shifting target. So, you know, talking about Tandy, he said something in his interview where he says, you know, it really wasn't too bad, then it got bad. He says, you're always looking, and, you know, it's hard to explain what it's like in these cars, but, you know, it all looks wet, but when you're out there, you're looking for any clues you have, changes in sheen, places that weren't shiny before that are now, and so that's as impressive as the lap times that Tandy was doing, the fact that he was able to read when it got bad, when it didn't get bad, and so, I mean.
See Rocky's eyeballs.
Yeah.
He's reading the road.
He's like, wait a minute. Well, I mean, you know, you talk about these guys that come in to fill in, and you look at Sebastian Bourdais, you know, in the 5 car. You look at a guy like Mike Rockenfeller, and you start looking at these third drivers, Max Pappas. They bring in the best of the best. Rockenfeller, a Le Mans winner, a DTM champion, and talk about one cool customer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just
I was thinking about how do you, if you're someone, how do you, as a third driver, if the third driver is 4-time champ Sebastian Bourdais, how do you counter that? Well, how about 4-time champ and the guy that just stole it a few weeks ago, Scott Dixon?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's literally the third guys arguably are the keys, because the guys that are sharp are kind of match up pretty even. So it's who can come up with the best third driver.
Yeah, Rocky's not bad either. Formula Le Mans winner,
yeah.
DTM champion. I mean, he's the best of the best as well.
See the GTD 007 in. That's, remember, Christina Nielsen leads the championship in that car, but only by 1 point. They're being shown in 6 as Kuno Whitmer behind the wheel. So the 90, the service that we saw there being considered emergency service, that is good news for them.
93 Viper, that module.
Or the 93, I should say. I'm sorry.
I don't get that one. I'll be honest with you. That's not how I interpreted the rule, but here we go.
Work going on the 007, and I thought it was going to be a routine stop, but it's taken a while. We saw the problems for Michael Valiente a little bit earlier. He's with Matt Yoakum.
Back in the visitflorida.com paddock area and catching up with Michael. So your team dodged a huge bullet.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that was my mistake. I just went through the corner and hit a puddle, and it instantly spun the car around, and those are the kind of conditions that we're dealing with. It's getting worse and worse. So it's unfortunate. You know, I apologize to the team, and you know, there's not really much to say. It's it is what it is. So
when you look at the track itself, what one area is giving you the most problems? They're out there looking at it, trying to do some trenching to get some drainage.
The whole track, it's a problem. It's dangerous. I mean, even having me turn around, yellow flags need to come way out earlier than that, because I'm backing into cars and I'm stuck there. So you're seeing cars go off everywhere. The yellow flags need to come out way earlier, and it'll be a lot more of what happened to me, and it's just going to be who stays out of trouble, really.
How scary is sitting there and your crew guys are telling you on the radio that, okay, the track is clear, okay, now it's not, yes it is. How scary is sitting there with the cars going by so close?
In the heat of the moment, I'll be honest, you don't care. It's the guys who are coming to dodge you, but it's the responsibilities of the series to keep us safe. So when you're strapped in there, you can't see anything. Our crew guys are doing their best to tell us, but unless there's yellow flags and they stop the race, you know, we're going to do our best to get on the track, and we can't see. So, I mean, I was watching to see people, but it's literally impossible with the weather and the positioning of the car, and I was surprised it took as long as it did, with having me trying to get the car in reverse and through the grass, that it was that long for it to come out. So, unfortunately, the yellow flags come out because they realize how dangerous it is, but my mistakes already put us behind the 8 ball, so we'll see.
Thank you, Michael. And points as they run now, the number 90 car has dropped to second in the championship standings, but that's what we call it as of now. So many hours left to run here at Road Atlanta.
And I think Michael's relating to it going full course yellow, not local yellow. The yellows were out in the area of his spin, but he's talking about why it wasn't just full course yellow, so everyone was under controlled speed.
Sebastian Bourdais now behind the wheel of the number 5. Let's have a listen to his radio.
Not so bad. There's only really one river at the bottom of 12, but it gets really, really tricky when you get to turn 1 and all the way down there. And it's directly proportional about the amount of water that's falling, so it's a good information to have.
Welcome back to Road Atlanta, the 18th running of Petit Le Mans. And right now, lights about to go out on the safety car. We'll be back to green flag racing, but some of the most treacherous conditions we have seen all year long in the Tudor United SportsCar Championship. It's not just the rain, it's the spray, it's the visibility, and it's the water running across the racetrack. All that combined with nearly 40 cars make it incredibly difficult.
Sebastian Bourdais in that 5 car just asked on the radio, saying it's the puddling and the rivers are directly proportional to how much is coming out of the air, which seems obvious, but it could be feeding in from the side of the track, in which case there would be a delay. So he asked the team, he said that'd be good information to have. So he's basically saying, as we go back to green,
he said the problem's right here.
It's here in 12 and in 1. He said, so if you guys could tell me how hard it's raining there when I get back to the front straightaway, that would help me.
You can see that puddle to driver's left out there on the left edge of the racetrack. And if you get wide coming off the corner, you're going to hit it and you're going to have a problem. We saw the 17 and the 90 both do that.
Well, you say being wide, Brian, that's the normal
Exactly,
line.
that's what I was going to say.
Wider than we're seeing guys run right now.
Well, and of course, too, a lot of times in the rain, you want to run a high line, but here's another one of the danger areas. Water runs downhill, and another problem for the 90.
Same corner, same car, different driver. Rocky has got caught out in turn 12.
On the Delta wing with a problem as well. That's coming through 11, down towards the start line, but Mike Rockenfeller now with a problem in the 90.
How do I get into reverse?
This is where you have
neutral and hold the down paddle. Hold the down paddle.
This is one of the problems you have when you bring in that third guy. He's not used to all of the systems. Rockenfeller, how do I get it into reverse?
The crew on the radio telling him how to do that, but Michael Valiente had difficult times as well. Look at the debris that's been thrown up and over the car, and he's having a difficult time getting it done.
Out of the grip. I don't get out. I don't get out.
He's not going anywhere without a help.
Race control is going to see if they can.
Oh, this is a short yellow.
My concern is with the drivetrain as well, Tommy, the clutch and stuff when you're doing this repeatedly.
There it is.
There he goes, creeping it out.
If he can get it out before the safety car
on the lead
lap,
this will be amazing.
It'll be another bullet.
Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. You're good.
And that's turn 12. Oh, good.
He just went down a lap right there. Oh, did he just hit the fence?
No. Oh.
One of the best sports car drivers in the business.
This is treacherous, and you said it, Brian, one of the best guys in the business struggling like this.
And I got to tell you, getting a lap back. Oh, and I think he may end up having it stuck in a problem for the 88 with significant damage to the front of that automobile. You see the left front askew. John Falk behind the wheel. Cars dropping off all over the place. And this is where drivers go back to green flag racing. Who cares? There's another 7.5 hours to go.
But Brian, the conditions, I mean, I don't care how slow
I get.
This is what Tandy said. He goes, you can tell when the cars start, maybe it wasn't Tandy, when the cars start flying off, he says it's just, that's
sometimes
when
you can't go slow enough.
Yeah.
You know, it's Oz Negri this morning at a spot on the racetrack, he's normally 140 miles an hour. He's going 63 miles an hour and loses control. I mean, how slow is slow enough,
Let's
know?
see. Oh, and
see the twitch?
Wiggle. Yeah, that's that apex lake.
And then you have no room to catch it. When you catch it, the car goes wide. It gets into the next lake on the outside, and it's done. Let's find the 88. Bottom of the screen, you see it? Oh, that's big impact.
On the straightaway.
Pretty much on a curved straightaway. No real load in the car, and he loses control.
And remember, the prototype challenge vehicles do not have traction control. So if he squeezes into the throttle a little bit too hard, 400 plus horsepower, and lights the rear tires up, then the rear end is gone. And, you know, Michael Valiente dodged a bullet, was able to keep the 90 on the lead lap when he had his problem in turn 12. But for Mike Rockenfeller, not so fortunate. And this is going to take a while. Safety crews attending to the 88. We saw the Delta wing with a problem at the top of the hill, turn 11. The 90 still stuck there as the safety crew gets there.
Well, we spoke to Valiente, and he said it's just impossible. And now we're on board with Rocky. And he's feeling, I mean, there's pressure. If it's your championship, when it's someone else's, just a terrible position to be put in.
And he knows. You said it at the beginning, Tommy. You said it when we did our open. You said it's like having the sideline with a 100-foot cliff at the edge. You step over and it can all go away in the blink of an eye.
It's what separates this sport from any, I've said it in different ways before, from any other sport. You could throw the worst pass in the history of the NFL and still win the Super Bowl. It's one play.
Yeah.
And so if you do it the wrong time, obviously that's not the case, but you can come back from any mistake in any other sport. But in this one, it's the only one. A mistake can take any car out at any second.
There you see it mid-corner, he just hits that stream across the racetrack, big twitch, then gets into the grass, loops it around. And Michael Valiente was frustrated. We spoke to him and he just said, I can't believe the conditions. We shouldn't be running in these conditions. Westbrook had been on the radio even during his stint when he was leading, saying, we need to stop this, it's getting too slippy out there. That's Dane Cameron just slipping by there, the overall leader right now.
And then the spin, and now is when he gets stuck. But the other thing, I think you pointed it out so well, Calvin, Michael was talking about full course caution. If you look at that video again of Rockefeller and the car leaves the racetrack, one flagger is waving the green flag for the restart of the race, the other one is grabbing the yellow, the green goes down, the yellow, the local yellow comes out. And the corner workers do a great job here of trying to protect the drivers. Obviously, Michael was talking about the full course caution, but you can see it right there as
lost 2 laps, I believe,
Ricky Cameron
Brian.
looking on.
That's Ricky Cameron, who's the engineer on the 90 car that are leading the championship. His son, Dane Cameron, is leading this motor race, and if it finished as it is right now, would be the champion tonight. So there's a real family dynamic there as well.
Think of the emotional tug.
Keep going.
Good news is I don't think there's any damage, TK.
No. There is, I mean, getting some laps back is hard, but it's not impossible. What they're gonna have to start doing is, staggering their strategy so they can take advantage of those lap down wave buys.
So they just had 2 problems within a few laps. Anybody else can do the same thing.
Yep.
The conditions are so treacherous right now that any mistake, as you pointed out, Tommy, it won't be tolerated by Mother Nature. It's going to bite you, and it can happen to anybody. We've seen it happen to some of the best in the business, so we're far from done.
Yeah, look, even under yellow, he's tiptoeing back.
And a lot of it, I mean, it's like, well, why is that guy keep flying off the road and that guy isn't? Well, the car setup can play into this, Tommy. Just the subtlety and how you got the suspension set up can deal with the deep water versus not.
Yeah.
It's be interesting to see pit lane closed, but would they come in and clean that car off a little bit and deem it emergency service, or
that's what I'm getting
to,
because
right
where do you take that?
On the slipper, maybe.
Yeah, we'll have to get out there and have a look.
Feeling some vibration. That may just be all the.
You could have a clump of mud inside one of the wheels.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, what they need, if they could wait maybe, and this yellow is going to take longer than 15, which would make pits would open.
Talk about the problems. Turn 12, really the nemesis for 90. This is on board with Michael Valiente when he had his issue.
It's about 30 minutes ago. Watch it. That's exactly what happened. Yeah, I mean, doesn't matter how fast your hands are in this business. We talk about a driver having fast hands and reacting and controlling a slide. It's all over.
And he struggled getting the car in reverse and trying to get it back on track. And you see how treacherous it is, and that's why we keep sitting here reacting as the cars come through there. And even when the yellow's out, race car drivers don't like to slow down all that much. And you can tell the car's really streaming by at speed. 17 with a problem. That was down in 10A.
Wolf Henslow had been laying down some really fast lap times, but he just suddenly exceeded the limit of the tire and the grip it would give him on the entry to turn 10. Then we see Bill Barfield, the race director, working with the crews to try and channel this water away from the racing surface.
So the officials trying to do what they can to keep the racing going, but some of the most difficult conditions we've seen. As we said, more to come from the 18th annual Petit Le Mans from Road Atlanta. We'll bring it to you right after this. '88 car being loaded up on the flatbed and removed. That was just out of turn 7, that left-hand kink out of turn 7. Falb trying to get the power down, 450 horsepower or so in a prototype challenge car, no traction control.
It was actually further up the straightaway. It was not the exit.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know what?
Dead straight line.
Yeah.
This could be that situation where it was up on the plank with water underneath it.
That's right. Johnny Molam talked about that earlier in the race with the plank and the skid plate underneath these PC chassis. It just gets up on there and suddenly the tires are not really touching the ground to the full force.
Well, Wayne Taylor and his crew trying to repeat as winners here, but it's going to be tough to do today with the conditions the way they are. But sitting pretty right now, Jordan Taylor in second place. Andrew, what do they say from down there at the Taylor land?
Well, here is Taylor land, ahead of Taylor land. Wayne, what's your take on this? I mean, is the track raceable?
No. I mean, if you listen to all the drivers' feedback, they're all saying it's too dangerous. And pretty sad that Michael Valiante had that situation happen to him and then be taken out the car, and a new driver gets put in and does the same thing. So at least justifies the fact that the track is just way not ready for racing.
And my take is that it's actually raining harder than it's been raining all day, actually.
Yeah, it is, and I don't really understand. You know, there was talk about a red flag, there was talk about yellow, there was talk about the race finishing earlier, there was talk about racing tomorrow. And while we're running a team, you know, we're putting a lot of equipment and drivers at risk. And motor racing isn't the safest sport to be in, and this is unnecessary, I think, and the amount of damage that cars are having. I don't know. I'm just confused.
Meanwhile, your boy's going really well.
Yeah,
as such as it is.
Yeah, I mean, if you see, we've just been driving around because there's really no point in putting the car or themselves under any risk. And if you look at it, you know, 2 cars went off almost in a straight line. You know, so it doesn't matter which driver you put in the car. Once you aquaplane, there's no control.
Wayne, thanks very much. And just another bit of information. We saw the Delta wing come in. That was a puncture on the right rear.
I think Wayne brought up a great point about the dynamic down there with the championship leading team. I mean, they saw Westbrook start from the pole, lead, not comfortably, but he was in control. But he was saying on the radio the conditions are getting bad. Michael jumps in, has the moment. Troy Fliss and the boys obviously made the determination, let's get him out, let's get Rockenfeller in, and he does the same thing. So I think that was Wayne's point there, that the car in these conditions, whether it's the setup with the 90 or whatever, can't deal with that amount of water coming through turn 12.
Yeah, and he says he doesn't understand. Here we're going to see the Falcon tire car, little wiggle, didn't get as far off, and now he's aquaplaning in the grass. There's a big lake right there. But in defense of the officials, with everything on the line, they're doing everything they can to get the race in. I think now it's fairly obvious in hindsight that they probably shouldn't have gone back to green there. But the same thing, if you flag this thing now and you can't get it going again, and you're like, okay, let's settle up the points and crown the champions. That's gonna leave a bad taste in some mouths too. So tough between a rock and a hard place right now.
Well, and you heard Wayne say there was talk about racing tomorrow, but if you believe the weather forecast, it's going to rain harder tomorrow. Maybe not as often, but when it does rain, the storms will be more intense. I don't know. You know, you're kind of...
There's that water right there, the apex of 12, essentially.
It's one of those deals where either way you look, it's not particularly pretty. And we're sitting here looking at weather radar, and you're going, well, it looks like it may be moving out and clearing up a little bit. So,
it does.
But it's looked like that all day, and they continue to pop up.
Sure.
Yeah, but you've got a big window. You know, if we all agree that this is not suitable to racing, you either red it or you yellow it, and then you wait a while, and then they've got a big window till like 2 a.m. tonight to try, get as far as you can. They got another 4-hour window tomorrow. Yeah, so I'd be surprised if they go back to green without a significant lessening in the amount of rain.
All right, so you see where we are, and you see the direction of the weather that's coming, and the problem is you look to the southeast and it looks kind of clear, but just about the time it clears, it pops up again. There's another storm that pops up. The most of the rain is about 50 to 100 miles to the east-southeast, but it just keeps developing as it gets closer here, and we get these pop-up showers. The one thing's for sure, whether it's a light shower or not, it doesn't really matter. The ground is so saturated, there's no place for the water to go, and more importantly, there is no sunshine to help dry up the racetrack, and I don't think we're going to see the sun here for the next couple of days.
Yeah, the ambient temperature is down, just hovering around 60, so you're not going to...
Nothing's going to evaporate. No. The air is too saturated for it to evaporate
anyway.
Yellow procedure.
Pits are open prototype.
Pits are open for prototype. You hear him say now, this water, you can see it running down the way. That's the other problem. This racetrack isn't flat, is it? No. So you've got the hills, and it's going to run down the hills. And where have we seen the problems? At the bottom of the downhill, coming onto the front straightaway at 12, and certainly down in the S's. So it's one of those places where anytime you get into one of those valleys, that's where the water is going to collect. And certainly on the way down the hills, that's where you're going to have those streams coming across.
You can see at the top of the S's another one that feeds.
And there's the water running across.
Big standing water here.
There's just nowhere for it to go.
Yeah, I think we need to just kind of take a breath and have some patience. If it would let up some, I think that even though the ground's pretty saturated, I think if it lets up, some of it would absorb, and we can get back to just bad conditions, not undrivable conditions.
I think that's looking up the hill into turn one. And one of the things that we had talked about before, and Justin Bell is back, and is that a lot of times when you run in the rain, you run what we would call a rim shot around the outside of the turn because that's where the better grip is. But when you look at a lot of this area, the outside of turn 12 is where there's standing water. You can't run there. We've seen the drivers get in trouble. And even there at the exit of turn one, was it raining at Le Mans when you won?
Do you know, yes, a
I was
little
gonna
bit
say.
of rain. And then in 95, it was horrific rain. And my first ever Le Mans in the 962 in 1992 was such bad rain that actually I was really glad my dad was in the car. Oh, look at those sandbags doing their job.
I think that's at the runoff at 5, and they've kind of created the drainage out to the side. They've used sandbags to direct the flow of water, and that seems to be working.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. The track has only been here a long time. It rains at Road Elantra, seems, every 3 years. One would think one might address this in advance, knowing that the rain might come. That's all I'm throwing out there, because the water is the same, if I remember correctly, and the water's in the same place as it was every time. It pulls in those places.
Well, you know, and it's rained so hard here over the last couple of weeks, but Tommy, you and I were talking about it too. As this racetrack has changed and developed, and they've changed some of the topography around here for the spectators and such, if the drainage didn't change too much, certainly the way the water flows is going to change. So maybe the drainage isn't where it necessarily needs to be compared to the way it was when before they did so much of the work up in 12 and down here.
It's a bad pun, but this is really the perfect storm. I mean, it's steady rain, it's heavy, it's, you know, the ground's saturated. So hopefully we can just take a breath here and as we see the pits open, this has been converted to a regular yellow from the short yellow where the pits are closed, and that 90 car is in. Matt Yoakum is there.
And Troy Fisk has called Mike Rockenfeller in. Now, Mike was telling the team that the noise that he was picking up was coming from the right front, especially on the left-hand turns, is when he really noticed the significance of it. They're going to check things out, also try to clean out a lot of the turf and mud out of the vent openings here on the Visit Florida Corvette. Tough break, but like you mentioned, they're going to have to now play strategy to try to get this car back in contention.
Why wouldn't you take the time to pull the front wheels and see if you don't have mud or grass up inside, packed up inside? That could be part of the vibration like you were talking about, Tommy.
Little rock.
The car's sitting there.
Caliper in the wheel would be the worst case scenario.
All he can do is put you between a Rockefeller and a hard place.
You didn't, really?
I just did. I had to.
You did?
I did. Well, he just did perfect storm.
This is what happened once again. Look how quick. The car makes the little twitch, and it moves a couple of feet to the outside. The driver does a great job of catching the initial one, but now you're out there on that water at the exit of 12. Nothing that you can do?
There's nothing. I was in the grabbing some lunch when he was in the middle of the track over here, and I tell you what, when that car came by him on the inside, I think he was like, sod this for a game of soldiers. I'm going to go back over there on the grass. I know he didn't mean to do another 180, but yeah. I tell you what, that was not the place to be, as that car who was rightfully going past did so at speed. It was a bit scary. Yeah, a bit scary.
Yeah.
Bubba, our intrepid radio guy, just pointed out to me, and he had a very valid point. If you look at that replay again, the right front tire bounces over the metal grate when it spins, and you wonder if maybe... Oh.
Yeah. See what I mean? From his point of view, he'd have been like, all right, I'm going back over there.
Now imagine if there was a second car that was unsighted or in the spray. You know, that's how we had the
And of course, look,
incident with
Dane Cameron knows that the 90 is sitting there. They've told him that he's sitting there. And while he needs to use caution, he knows that if he can get by him, he's going to put him a lap down.
Yeah.
So he's pushing hard coming off the corner. You're going, well, why didn't he slow down? He wants him a lap down.
He wasn't going very fast either. He was slowed down, and they've been telling him, okay, car's sitting on the exit.
And he said, which car?
Yeah. And then right when he gets there, it moves. So,
I mean, look, he wasn't coming through there at speed, but he was getting through there as quickly as he possibly could. The idea of being able to drop him a lap was big. Now the 3 is in. Think about what Corvette's Racing's done this year. Sebring, Daytona, Sebring, Le Mans. If they could end up with Petit Le Mans, that would be quite the feather in their cap. If you look at any big endurance races in the world.
Offsets everything else that's happened to them for the rest of the year. You know, they've won the ones where the team strengths are, well, normally pace. Not this year, but it's durability, it's teamwork, it's the excellence in the pits, the speed they do things, it's the strategy calls, and they do that in the long races where the story has a time to unfold, and that's why they do well in the long races.
Yeah, the Sebring, they were probably not going to beat the Porsches, but they had they switched to a fuel mileage strategy and stole that one on fuel mileage.
And the Porsches had problems as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, think about this too. There have been not only adjustments of performance this year that Porsche got that helped them out, but remember Michelin in the GTLM category also produced a new tire. Well, the tire seemed to work better for Porsche than it did for anybody. So it was like 2 Christmas presents when everybody else only got 1, because the Porsche guys had gotten some adjustment of performance. Then they found a tire that worked better for them. And you saw Porsche reel off 3 wins in a row at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, Road America, and VIR. So that combination of stuff really allowed Porsche to jump to the front later in the season. Now the rain's slowing down a little bit. That's good news, but we got to get rid of what's there on the racetrack. So I'd expect to see the blowers back out.
That's all a very high-risk situation as well. You know, bringing heavy equipment onto the track in these conditions is has to be highly evaluated in the wake of what we've seen in Formula One in this year. You know, a tragic accident that happened with a truck, effectively, a digger, and it's very dangerous in these conditions too. And so the race director has to really, you know, he's calling it now because the weather is getting maybe a little bit better, so now's the time to bring some equipment out. But it always scares me, Tommy, when I see those things out there, because when you're in the car,
they don't move.
They don't move. No.
So.
Understand the 3 car has a flat tire, and he'll have to come back to pit road. Jan Magnussen behind the wheel, 7th in class after that last pit stop, and as long as he can have to wait for timing and scoring to scroll through to see if he lost a lap on that last pit stop or not. He's being shown a lap down. Now he comes by and he's on the same lap as the leaders in GTLM. We'll see if he can stay on that lap as he gets flat tire repaired. But you know, hats off to Bo Barfield and the guys for getting out of race control, going and looking, helping direct some of the fixes down in 5. The series wants this race to run to its full length. They want to do that. They want to do it for the competitors. There's the 3 in pit lane. They want to do it for the competitors. They want to do it for the fans. They want to do it safely, and they're doing everything that they can to get it done. And I know some of the teams aren't too happy with it, and others are like, well, hey, it's okay. But hats off to them. I think they're doing a great job working as hard as they can to get it done.
So obviously, as you can imagine, there was an awful lot of premeditation about how this race could go down. We had our meeting with Bo Barfield on Thursday, didn't we? And they were already in in strategy mode then, and pre-strategy for eventualities. And they actually put a mandate out there that they were going to run cleaning equipment on one side of the track. The cars have to absolutely run the other side of the track. So they forecast what was going to happen in this, and everyone's got a good heads up. And of course, the crews are now telling them. So, but there's still big pieces of equipment out there, and very difficult conditions.
Right at 7 hours to go, and that's plenty of time to get back in the fight, Matt Yoakum, for the 90 team.
And catching up with Troy Fliss, team manager and owner of the Visit Florida Corvette. So First and foremost, the car hit pit road. Is there any damage to that right front area?
No, I think we're okay. I think everything's going to be just fine. Just a little bit of mud, and we had the opportunity to top back off again, so hopefully we can run a little longer here than the other guys and make up some of these laps.
Hindsight's always 20/20. You can't put water back in the faucet, so to speak. But should they have thrown the caution? Was it too treacherous from what Richard and then Michael said?
Yeah, they were saying that. I mean, but it's hard for race control to tell that. They're getting a lot of information from all the drivers, and we know it's a hard call for them to make. So they're just going to have to keep learning and keep working through this. It's a challenge for all of us. So.
From your very first race in 1993, your team has always been fighters, the old Spirit of Daytona guys. You have over 7 hours left. Now you're going to have to put more emphasis on strategy to get that car back in contention.
Yeah, I mean, we got plenty of time to make it back up. We got to get back up there. You know, we're looking for that podium to try to get into the championship, and that's what we're looking for. So we got a good car, as Richard proved earlier in the race here. The car's fast, so we just got to get going here again and, you know, hopefully make up some of these positions. But, yeah, this team will fight to the end.
No give up with the boys in blue.
Well, they'll try to get back in it. Dane Cameron now leading. Bo Barfield out on track. Not a bad way to drive around the track.
No, I mean, it's like he doesn't want to mess it up. That is, we're all watching. And believe me, we'll give him a pretty hard time if he spun that right now. But I always think that when you watch the pace car out there at Formula One, don't you? When he's having to hammer around in front of those cars, I'm like, and it's always a well-known driver that does that. And you're like,
Bernd Maylander.
Bernd Maylander, you're like, okay, he's on it just to hold the pace for them. It's good that Bo's out there, though, because he's getting first-hand feel for it in that a road-going Porsche of what's happening out there on the track.
But that'll give him an idea, and it helps them make their decisions a little bit more. You know, for Troy Fliss, his decision's pretty easy. They got to work on strategy to get the 90 back up there. But look down pit road to Action Express. You got two dogs in the fight, so to speak, and it's one of those deals where you go, they've had some issues between the 31 and the 5 as of late. Be interesting to see how they play this one out, as we know those guys will be charging. So talk about charging the Delta Wing very fast. In practice the other day when things were a bit drier. Andrew, how's it going down at Delta Wing?
I'm with Catherine Legg here. Well, first, let's have a look at her boots. I'm very disappointed in you. A lot of the girls have got some very trendy boots on, and Wellingtons we call them in England. You've just got black ones.
Needs must. I think, yeah, my race boots are soaked through after that stint, so trying to blow them with a hairdryer and stick paper in them, and I got given these as a token of their appreciation.
Now, last season, of course, at this race, you finished 4th. It was your best result. What are your thoughts now? This year, it's so tough at the moment.
Yeah, we were really hoping for a dry race because when we tested here, actually, our lap times were quicker than anybody. So we were thinking if we had the reliability, we would be in with a shot. When it dries out a little bit, we're competitive. But when it's like this, you know, we don't have the weight or the downforce or the tire width or anything. So we're just kind of struggling a little bit and trying to keep out of trouble, hoping that at some point today, maybe if we do like a dance to some sun god or something, it might turn out in our favor. But we're a couple of laps down, so we're going to need a miracle.
Now, you've got those little front wheels, but I understand it doesn't understeer that badly. It doesn't push that badly.
No, really the biggest difference to driving the Delta Wing compared to driving anything else is the lack of weight transfer. So when you brake, you don't feel the rear end trying to raise up, and you don't feel the weight coming forward. It's very sort of linear and lateral. In these conditions, however, yes, we do have understeer, and I think that is our biggest problem. Obviously, everybody has power down, traction, and oversteer on the exit. They all have issues, but ours are comparable with everybody else's there. But the more standing water it is, more because of the weight of the car, the more we seem to just aquaplane a bit.
And now there has been a suggestion you might be going to Indy next year with an all-girl team. Is that still ongoing?
Suggestion, yes, we announced that at Indy this year, and we're very much looking forward to competing in the 100th running of the Indianapolis 500. You know, the Indy race is one that's very close to my heart, so it will be an interesting experience and one that we can hopefully run up front for.
Excellent, real girl power there.
I think she had a very valid point, probably more so than anything. It's the weight of the Delta Wing. Remember, it was designed to weigh less. It had less horsepower, weighed less, but it was more efficient so it could run at the same speeds and compete. But in this rain, you want that road-hugging weight helping. And really, the small front tires help dissipate water pretty well. So you don't want a giant rain tire, wide rain tire. That's more surface area to help with the aquaplaning. You don't want that. So the smaller contact patch isn't so bad. She just doesn't have the weight to hold the car down.
Now, ordinarily, I wouldn't get into this territory, but so we have these long rain delays. You know, there's all this buzz about Danica and Ricky Stenhouse. Don't have full confirmation, but Andy Lally and Catherine have been hanging out a good bit lately.
Yeah, I was asking Andy about that the other day, if I could say that on television, and he said that Catherine didn't really care.
Wow.
That he was probably more guarded about it than
there you go.
Everyone else.
The cat's out of the bag.
And you know what? Everything is so similar in those two scenarios, bar a couple of $100 million. you don't
know that.
No, do you know, all I was going to say was if the water table does get to about 12 feet, that delta wing will go through it really well because it is shaped like a torpedo.
Yep.
So I reckon there'll be a critical mass that it'll go straight through.
They were saying one of the biggest problems as well was from the driver's side, not the feel of the car, but visibility. Hard to get air into the car and get the windshield clear on the thing, more so than some of the other ones, because if you think about the size of a prototype, you've got more body size to put scoops on and help direct air around and through the cockpit and clean the fogging issue. And in the Delta Wing, it's hard to get enough air into the cockpit to get the fog off of the windshield. So they've been working on defrosting systems and all of that.
Now, the Corvettes, I don't know I think all the Corvettes run, at least the 2 Action Express and the 90 car run heated electric windshields. And so pretty much the fogging is pretty much a non-issue for them.
When we were, it's so funny, things have evolved so much in the heat, and I'd say in hotter conditions, technology has really helped them. In the wet, water's still something that gets in everywhere and causes an issue, right? And you know, we saw after the pit stops, they'd fog up, and it was funny. Someone in the Continental race was doing this in the Viper. We used to, standard equipment in the Eureka Vipers at the end of the 90s was a extendable squeegee.
Yep.
And we used to squeegee the windshield from the inside during the yellow cautions and give it a little rub, sometimes going down the the straights if you had to. And we had all these Velcro points so we could like stick it back in because I mean, it is terrifying, Tommy, isn't it? Yeah. I think all the 3 of us sitting up here can relate to, there's moments when we were looking inside Tristan Nunez's car earlier. You guys weren't in the booth at that point, but I'm sure you were watching. He could not see.
Yep.
And obviously he can see better than we can with his eyes, but it's terrifying like that.
Well, there was a request at the drivers' meeting because of the spray and so forth. If you're limping back, don't just get to the edge of the track. Get off the track, which is most people aren't going to do because they don't want to just trudge through the mud. But imagine, because what you do is the road goes, and even though you can't see, you still have your foot down and you're watching the edge of the road. You're looking out the front for something, and but you would have no time to react.
I know we're a long, long way from this race being over, even if they called it at the halfway point. That's another couple hours, but Townsend Bell leading in GT Daytona.
Fantastic.
And you look for the 00. Where are they? They're back in 9th. That would give the championship to Townsend Bell and Bill Sweetler. That's big. The 007 back in 9th, like I was saying. And it's one of those things that already you're trying to jockey. We talked about that. If this race gets cut short, you want it to be where you need to be. Conditions as good as they've been. And we've been told the lights are going to go out on the safety car, and it'll be time to go. And even though they're saying conditions are, quote, as good as they've been, they didn't say they were good. They're just as good as they've been. And it's the restarts, that's where it really gets tricky, and Calvin, was very quick to point out, well, it's bad for everybody. But, a lot of the teams in qualifying just said, you know what, we're just going to get a lap in so that we can start the race. And I think that's almost the mindset you have to have on a restart. And I know it's easy to say, and I know that the conditions are treacherous, but this is the time to say there's time left.
Well, what I was going to say was we saw in that opening hour on restarts, it's so hard right now to overtake. The disparity, the delta between each class is the least it ever has been because of the wet.
Yeah,
so overtaking on that restart, I mean, Nick Tandy was mind-blowing out of the gate every time. And watch it, Jordan right now, he's going to be, right up behind Dane. It's a good time to go by, even though it's a risky time, because track position is going to be very important at the front of the field.
So you see the lights out on the safety car.
And looking at the front straight, there's still a lot of water there. So I'm not sure I would say the conditions are as good as they've been. The they're better than they were.
And the conditions aren't probably going to get any better anytime soon, so you got to kind of go. But there's the spray. As the speed begins to pick up, we see the spray pick up. And that's really been one of the big issues, as well as the visibility that the drivers have talked about. But this is the nerve-wracking time. The nerve-wracking time. Colin Brown is now in the 54. We're past the 3-hour mark, so John Bennett certainly got his time. So John is clinched. Colin Brown needs to do 1 lap. And if he does that, then they will clinch as driver champions in the Prototype Challenge category. Dane Cameron in the 31. Corvette down the hill looking for the green flag, and this is where you got to be so careful. We're back to green. There's the puddle of water, another one on the outside. Cameron, a good job of navigating around it and down the front straightaway. Can everybody get through this time?
Yeah, Dane did what he had to do. He got on it early, but he left about 10 feet to the edge of the road there, as you would, I think, Tommy. But as you see them stream down in here, the visibility is just turning to rubbish, isn't it, by the rest of the GT cars get there.
Yeah, they talk about clean air in NASCAR. In the rain, it's clear, clear air.
Look at the spray. And, a lot of times drivers will say, and I've been one of them who've said, when in the rain, a lot of times I would rather have another car in front so they can pick their way through and I can see where the problem areas are. The problem is, if you're the second guy right now, you can't see anything.
Yeah. Look at Wolf Hensler. He's a little redemption needed in this team. They've had a rough road so far. Wolf Hensler's up to 3rd in the Falcon Tires Porsche. Everybody at this track wants to see them do well this weekend, and they've got to stay on track now, I'd suggest, was a bit more their strategy.
Impressive that they've worked their way back up to 3rd, and obviously the full course cautions have helped. The yellows have helped. They can play a little bit of strategy. They had problems early on. Right behind him, see one of the other Porsches.
Did he get around Pilet?
No, that's what I was just looking at. Is that why I looked at timing and scoring?
Well, he's about to get overtaken down here into 15, I think.
No, Hensler now
10.
pulls out a little bit. I think discretion being the better part of valor. Pilet going, this is okay right now. Maybe I don't need to be there. Let him go and see what we can get from this. And now working around or trying to work around Prototype Challenge traffic. And that's where you have to understand not only the other classes, you want to know who's in that car.
Yeah.
Who's in that car, and you want to know what that car is. We talked about it before. They don't have traction control, so when you're behind one in these treacherous conditions, you know that Prototype Challenge car has more of a propensity to move and slide at the exit of a corner. They don't have the driver aids.
With the visibility, I'm not sure they can even tell
what it is,
which kind of car it is or what it is, much less.
Certainly from a distance back, you don't. The 17 did indeed get around Patrick Pilet.
But the thing with the Prototype Challenge cars is their fastest lap is a second slower than the GTLM cars. So, that's why they're not going to go by that easy.
John Edwards in the BMW out in front, remember?
Oh, nice. Now, if that was for a drift video, that would be great. But when you're 7 hours to go in this race, that must wake you up a little bit.
These are some of the best sports car drivers in the world. John Edwards, one of the young guns. BMW out in front. What I was saying is this is going to be important for the Manufacturers Championship.
Yeah, it's for manufacturer. It's literally who finishes in front of whom, and driver. Obviously, it's down to the one car of each mark. He wiggles here. Here comes the river. Another wiggle. Right after he turns in, going one way. Now another one.
Nicely done.
He's earning his money.
And certainly in slow motion, it doesn't look that dramatic. But when you think about the speed that they're actually coming down through there, it's just.
Do you know how much I'd love a...
It looks predictable, though, right now.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got the slide coming off the corner. It's like he doing where it is, and he knows the limit of it, and that's okay.
Well, Brian, he wouldn't have done it again, right?
Yeah.
Choice.
To see how heavy it's raining, if you look right behind the wheels, and you see, and then coming out of the wheel wells, that's a clue that it's got heavier rain than it's been.
A lot of standing rain out there right now. But it's interesting, isn't it? All these guys are capable of outstanding moments, and just what they're doing right now, you and I know, this is outstanding driving. Despite it, you might not see people overtaking. You might say just to hold the pace they are and hold on to the track. I think, wait, nicely, don't touch that paint too much. He'd have gone all light in his hands over there, wouldn't he? Like,
now, Pile's gotten back around Hensler and is closed back up on Edwards. So these guys are having a real battle.
Really?
Seesawing fore and aft.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see that water behind the contact patch is a clue.
Yeah. And they're really coming off the corners well.
And maybe just talk sort of physics for a bit. Basically, I think I've said this before on a telecast, the grooves in the tire have a volume to them. If the amount of water that it's hitting at any point in its rotation is greater than the volume in those grooves, it's going to lift it off the ground. That's what aquaplaning is. So,
and who does the math?
Who does the math?
The guy sitting behind the wheel.
Yeah, no.
He's continually doing math.
Mother Nature does that math.
He's continually doing math, going, have I put too much water underneath?
And Andy Lally talked about it. He said, like the Continental has a little bit more water volume in the grooves, which makes their car better. Maybe, the GTD car's better in the heavy rain, relatively speaking. And then when it dries out a little bit, the GTLM cars, a little softer compound, not quite as deep a groove, which means their tread blocks would be a little more, little more rigid, not squirm as much.
You still see standing water there in 3 and 4 as they head.
And you want to talk pressure, back to the analogy about, it's like having a 100-foot drop on the sidelines of the football field. Okay, here you have the lead BMW and the lead Porsche, and whoever wins the manufacturer's championship. They've been battling all season long. And with the threat that the race could end at any time. Yeah. So it's not like, I'll settle in and just follow him and not take too many chances. It's they've got to battle like it is for the championship, because it quite well could be.
I tell you what, that was great, Brian. We watched him. Look at him go down the inside. Fantastic. He's just hooked it round there.
Spectacular.
As he comes off that. Do you know what? They were all over each other.
Spectacular.
Wow. John Edwards was all sideways coming down the S's. You could see that Pile was quick coming out, but then he got his own slide on. He set him up going through those end corners there, and 6-7, very good.
The Porsches just have definitely had a bit of an edge all weekend long.
Well, I mean, Catherine Legg was talking about weight. Well, think about the Porsche. It's got the weight over the rear wheels. We say this all the time. The Porsche in the rain is going to sit down, get the power down, coming off the corners. And I think that's exactly the drive that we saw by Pile, able to get off the corners, get up on the back of John Edwards, and just put that car up alongside him on the way into 7. And you talk about the strength of the Porsches, the 44 has taken the lead in GTD. So the Magnus Racing Porsche now leading in the GTD category.
Brian, you're a little bit more like a 911 in weight distribution, aren't you?
I am. I've got a lot of weight over the rear wheels. Yeah. Absolutely. It's just the way my family is. You had to point that out, didn't you?
Yeah. We're more like the Delta Wing in the Bell family.
I don't even want to go there. And not only did Pile get by, I mean, he really found the handle on that 911. He had that battle going with Wolf Hensler after the restart. Now, and not only did he get back past Hensler, made quick work of John Edwards and is beginning to walk away. And it's, God, the visibility down the back straightaway.
Dane Cameron doing a great job there. His last lap time, a second, well, 1.8 clear of Sebastian Bourdais, but that was, you never know on the traffic at that particular moment. But Dane's certainly still laying down very fast lap times. We didn't see that the last time he took the lead. He actually had relinquished it, but this time he's holding on. Car's obviously working very well. He's driving very well.
We've got a battle shaping up in GTD. We mentioned that the 44 car is leading. Mark Goossens is running quicker and is only about 2.5 seconds behind.